Chapter 524. Xiongshi was in a good mood. He hummed a tune as he strolled leisurely. The wind blew, causing the tuft of hair on his head to sway in the wind. It was as though it was reflecting his cheerful mood. Heavenly Mist City Central Plaza was packed with people. The crowd was densely packed, and it seemed like an endless stream of people. Compared to the competition of the top 100, the competition of the top 50 attracted even more attention. The seats around the arena were filled with people. Every single one of them had an excited look on their faces as they cheered excitedly for their favorite alchemist. Xiongshi was very satisfied as he walked toward the arena. From time to time, he would wave in the direction of the audience. As a genius alchemist of Heavenly Shine City, he was not as famous as the other genius alchemists of Heavenly Pill City. However, he still had some supporters. Xiongshi was always calm and collected in front of these supporters. There were a total of 5 arenas for the competition of the top 50. Each arena had 2 magnificent bronze platforms. The competition of the top 50 was different from the elimination rounds. The bronze platforms prepared by the officials were even more magnificent and exquisite. Although the exquisiteness of the platforms did not affect the alchemists much, the audience would still think that the platforms were grand. It was better to put on a good show. Bufang carried his signboard as he strolled forward amidst the cheers of the audience. The audience was extremely excited. After a few matches, Bufang, the dark horse, had completely captured the hearts of many people. He had become the idol of many people's support. His popularity in Heavenly Mist City had even caught up to that of the veteran genius alchemists. This was somewhat inconceivable. It could even be said that it was unimaginable. As the public enemy of alchemists, shouldn't he be boycotted? When Xiongshi saw Bufang, the joy on his face disappeared. He stared coldly at Bufang. This guy, why doesn't he have dark circles? Why is he so energetic? When Xiongshi saw Bufang's appearance, he could not help but feel anxious. Look, the little chef's opponent is Xiongshi of Heavenly Shine City. Xiongshi, the crazy Xiong? The little chef might lose this round. Xiongshi is extremely cunning. He must have already made a move against Owner Bu. That fellow's methods of dealing with his opponents aren't limited to just within the arena. When the audience saw Xiongshi and Bufang, they started whispering to each other. Xiongshi's reputation among alchemists wasn't small, and it wasn't a good one. Hence, there wasn't a situation where the audience was one-sided in this match. Everyone was looking at this match objectively. Xiongshi wasn't much stronger than Sheng. Hence, Owner Bu still had a high chance of winning. His opponent was Xiongshi. The audience suddenly hoped that the dark horse would continue to be a dark horse. Xiongshi thought for a long time, and the anxiety in his heart suddenly calmed down. He narrowed his eyes and looked deeply at Bufang. Keep pretending, keep pretending. Xiongshi was almost fooled by him. His restaurant was destroyed, yet he could still act as if nothing had happened. It was a pity that this little chef didn't become an actor. Xiongshi rubbed the tuft of hair on top of his head and grinned. Bufang seemed to feel Xiongshi's gaze, and he looked over with a puzzled expression. He discovered that Xiongshi was staring at him and smiling foolishly. Bufang expressionlessly nodded at him, and he looked at Xiongshi as if he was looking at an idiot. Xiongshi was stunned, and he immediately became furious. Why are you looking at me like that? The contestants in the top 50 quickly gathered on the first arena. Every one of them had an imposing aura. Since they were already in the top 50, if they worked hard, they would be able to advance further. The competition of the top 50 was not an ordinary competition. According to the previous rules, this competition would determine the top 10 contestants, and the remaining 40 contestants would be ranked. Naturally, they would have to show their best. Even if they couldn't enter the top 10, they would at least be able to get a good ranking in the top 50. They wouldn't be at a disadvantage. Nangong Wuk also came. This time, he had a serious expression on his face. His opponent this time was really special. Nangong Wuk had a heaven and earth obsidian flame, and it was the same heaven and earth obsidian flame that he had once possessed. Duan Yun, on the other hand, was quite carefree. His opponent was very strong, but being able to enter the top 50 had already exceeded his expectations. Even if he lost, he didn't care. In the sky, a warship slowly approached. It covered the entire sky, and it brought with it a heavy rumble. A strong wind blew, and everyone in the audience couldn't help but narrow their eyes. 5 silhouettes emerged from the warship and floated in the void. Their long robes fluttered in the wind, and their auras were extraordinary. They were the judges of the Magical Hand Conference, the 5 four-cloud alchemy grandmasters. Grandmaster Xian Ming stood with his hands clasped behind his back, and his gaze was extremely sharp. As the chief judge of the Magical Hand Conference, he had his own dignity. The 5 experts landed on the high platform and sat in their respective seats. Grandmaster Xian Ming took a step forward, and he appeared on the first arena as if he had teleported. With his hands clasped behind his back, he looked at the many participants with an indifferent expression. Today is the start of the competition for the top 50. Everyone should be familiar with the competition for the top 50. Today's competition will determine the top 10 participants of the competition, and we will also rank the top 50 participants. Everyone might be wondering how the ranking will be. Although the competition will still be held on an arena, there will be a magic array carved on the bronze platforms on each arena. The magic array will record the time you spend and the effects of your work. The 2 factors will then be used to determine your ranking, Grandmaster Xian Ming said. This is the time for glory, and it is the time for all of you to display your true strength. Thus, I hope that all of you will be in your best condition for the competition for the top 50. Grandmaster Xian Ming swept his gaze across the audience, and in the end, he said this in a serious tone. As soon as he finished speaking, the surrounding audience erupted into cheers. It was finally time for the most exciting competition. Good. Now, all participants, please go to your respective arenas and prepare. Remember, you must give it your all, Grandmaster Xian Ming said. After saying this, he clasped his hands behind his back, turned around, and walked towards his own arena. On the 5 arenas, there were already referees standing upright. Their faces were solemn. This competition was extremely important, and they could not afford to be careless. Bu Fong carried a signboard and walked towards the 3rd arena. This time, his arena was the 3rd arena. The referee on the arena was not the chief judge that everyone was familiar with. Instead, it was a judge that they had never seen before. He did not smile, and he was extremely cold. Bu Fong carried his signboard and walked onto the arena. His face was expressionless as he nodded at the referee. Then, he walked to his own bronze platform. The gazes of the audience were all attracted to the 3rd arena. Xiongshi versus the Dark Horse, the Little Chef. Wasn't this very exciting? Xiongshi was wearing an alchemist robe. Because his body was too majestic, the originally loose alchemist robe looked like a tight-fitting robe. Stop pretending. If you're sad, show it. That way, it will be useful in the competition. If you hold it in now, you won't be able to perform well later. Don't suppress your emotions. Xiongshi walked in front of Bu Fong's bronze platform and touched the tuft of hair on his head. Revealing his pearly white teeth, he smiled. Bu Fong placed his signboard on the bronze platform with a thud. When he heard Xiongshi's words, he felt a little confused. He looked at Xiongshi, who was smiling like a retard, and was speechless. He could not be bothered with Xiongshi. Green smoke curled around his arm, and the golden dragon bone kitchen knife and black turtle constellation wok floated out and landed on the bronze platform. Xiongshi narrowed his eyes. This little chef was indeed worthy of being the guy who could deal with sorceress and Sheng. His acting skills were indeed amazing. However, he would definitely crush this brat ruthlessly and let him know what it was like to cry. The corners of Xiongshi's mouth twitched as he returned to his bronze platform. He took out a gigantic alchemy furnace. This alchemy furnace was made of bronze, and he ruthlessly smashed it onto his bronze platform. It looked extremely heavy and huge. This was a 3-legged alchemy furnace. There were 3 small openings at the bottom of the alchemy furnace, which were used for ventilation. This was the alchemy furnace that Xiongshi had specially made. He took out the medicinal ingredients from his spatial spirit tool and carefully placed them on the bronze platform. Xiongshi's entire demeanor changed. He became extremely careful, and his gaze became much sharper. He even took out a piece of white cloth and buried his head into the alchemy furnace, wiping it with all his might. The reason why Xiongshi was called Crazy Xiong was not only because of his personality, but also because he was extremely picky and meticulous when it came to alchemy. For example, when he wiped the alchemy furnace, he would not allow any impurities to exist within it. Kid, you really know how to act, but it doesn't matter. You won't be able to do it in a while. Xiongshir's smile was somewhat treacherous. He took out a spirit herb that looked like an orchid and plucked off its white leaves. He piled the leaves together, and the corners of his mouth curled up. He took out a mask and covered his mouth and nose. Before the competition, he had studied Bu Fong in detail. Throughout the competition, Bu Fong had used either fragrance or spiciness to achieve victory. All in all, Bu Fong was almost the same as him. They were both unscrupulous. This time, it was a battle of unscrupulous means. Let's see whose unscrupulous means were more awesome. The smell of the sorrowful orchid can cause one's heart to be filled with sorrow. Little chef, aren't you very good at acting? I want to see if you can still act after smelling the smell of the sorrowful orchid. Since your sorrow is so great, I will help you magnify it. Xiongshi laughed treacherously. He raised his palm, and a ball of pinkish alchemic fire appeared. With a flick of his finger, the pinkish alchemic fire entered the alchemy furnace. With a loud bang, the alchemy furnace was filled with a dazzling pink light. The leaves of the sorrowful orchid were also thrown into the alchemy furnace. After he was done, he took out the medicinal ingredients and began to refine the alchemy furnace. A faintly discernible smell wafted out from the vent of the alchemy furnace. All of a sudden, Xiongshi was stunned. He seemed to have inadvertently seen something incredible. His eyes widened as he looked in the direction of Bu Fong. There, Bu Fong took out a huge figure from his spatial spirit tool. With a loud bang, the figure smashed into the ground, causing the ground to tremble. What was that? Was it Bu Fong's ingredient? How could it be so huge? However, when he saw the huge figure, Xiongshi was completely dumbfounded. The audience was also stunned for a moment before they cried out in surprise. Chapter 525. With a thump, the entire arena shook violently. The sudden appearance of a large object attracted the attention of the audience. What was that? The audience was somewhat dumbfounded. No one had expected that Bu Fong would bring out such a big guy this time. Some of the audience members did not recognize the object, but when they saw its appearance, they sucked in a breath of cold air. Their eyes widened. They looked at Bu Fong, then turned their heads to look at Xiongshi, who was standing in the distance. Their expressions were strange. The big thing that Bu Fong pulled out was none other than a giant bear. That bear was no longer breathing, and it was obviously dead. But a bear? Could it be that Bu Fong wanted to cook bear meat this time? What was the most delicious part of a bear? It was undoubtedly the paw of a bear. Even alchemists like them knew this. But was it really appropriate to cook bear paw in front of Xiongshi? Wasn't Bu Fong afraid that Xiongshi would suddenly go crazy and fight him? Everyone knew that the crazy Xiong from Heavenly Shine City loved bears. He had many spirit bears. But now, in the Magical Hand Conference, someone was actually cooking bear paw. Moreover, that person was his opponent. It seemed that this little chef was trying to provoke Xiongshi. As expected of Owner Bu, he was indeed amazing. He was able to grasp his opponent's weakness in an instant. But where did this bear come from? Many people were puzzled. Where did this bear come from? Even Bu Fong did not know, let alone the audience. Perhaps even the Lord Go, who had killed the bear with a few paws, did not know. This was because the bear had screamed outside the restaurant in the middle of the night, which was why it was killed by the Lord Go. The Lord Go did not do it on purpose. It was the bear that sought its own death. It looked as if it wanted to be cooked. Xiongshi's eyes widened. He took off his mask and looked at the bear on the ground. He felt as if he had been struck by lightning. That's right. It was his bear. It really was his bear. That appearance, that figure. It was his bear. Didn't Big Bear go to look for a female bear? Why did it appear here? How did he die? Xiongshi's eyes were bloodshot as he stared at the mountain-like big bear lying on the ground. His eyeballs were about to pop out of their sockets. He stared at Bufong, but the latter didn't seem to care about him at all. Bufong took the dragon bone kitchen knife, twirled it, and calmly walked to Big Bear. Bufong's gaze fell on the big bear's paw. He didn't pay attention to anything else. The only part of a bear that could be considered delicious was its paw, which was also the part with the most medicinal properties. Standing in front of Big Bear, Bufong's eyes were calm as he held the dragon bone kitchen knife. Suddenly, the true energy in his body surged, causing his hair to flutter in the wind. The golden dragon bone kitchen knife instantly burst forth with a resplendent golden light. It was as though a dragon's roar had burst forth from the kitchen knife. The indistinct shadow of a dragon caused the audience to involuntarily let out a cry of surprise. Poochie, the saber slashed down. It was as light as a feather, without any obstruction. That bear paw was cut off in response, cut off. Although this was a divine physique echelon bear, since it was already dead, its defense was less than a tenth of its original. Naturally, it was sliced into pieces by the dragon bone kitchen knife. Picking up the bear's paw, Bufong casually waved his hand, and the huge bear was stored in the system's dimensional storage. Holding the bear's paw, Bufong walked back to the bronze platform. When Xiongshi saw Bufong's kitchen knife slash down, his heart clenched. His eyes widened, and the veins in his eyes grew thicker. He felt as though the knife had landed on his heart. Pain. It was a heart-wrenching pain. My big bear, how did you become someone's ingredient? Didn't I tell you to destroy the restaurant and run? Don't you know how to run after acting tough? Xiongshi was so sad that he found it hard to breathe. He threw his mask onto the bronze platform, and his face contorted in pain. Pink smoke wafted out of the alchemy furnace, wafting into Xiongshi's nose. Xiongshi's whole body trembled, and his big body started to tremble violently. It was so painful that he wanted to cry. Sob, 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 sob. My big bear. Xiongshi was so sad that he started to sob. His widened eyes turned red, and tears streamed down his cheeks. He used both hands to wipe away his tears and snot, and his heart was filled with pain. His heart was filled with sorrow, but the more he cried, the sadder he felt. We agreed to find a female bear. So why did you become someone's ingredient? We agreed to run after acting tough. So why didn't you come back? My big bear. The more Xiongshi cried, the more pain he felt. In the end, he could no longer stop crying, and he sat on the ground, wailing loudly. The pink flame within the alchemy furnace spread out, and the pink smoke wafted out and entered his nose. The more he inhaled, the sadder he cried. Why did he want to cry so much? Bufong was dumbfounded. It wasn't just Bufong. The entire audience was dumbfounded. What was wrong with Xiongshi? The competition hadn't even started. Why was he crying on the ground? His cries were hoarse, and he couldn't stop. The audience watched the scene in amazement. They felt that it was funny and strange. They suddenly realized that as long as they got close to the public enemy of alchemists, something fun would happen. This time, his furnace didn't explode. Instead, he made his opponent cry. This was too awesome. Based on this trend, this dark horse had the ability to enter the top 10. All the opponents he met either exploded their furnaces or cried. He had never refined an elixir properly before. Xiongshi couldn't stop crying, and his heart ached. He was also sad. This time, it wasn't because of Big Bear's death, but because he couldn't stop. He patted his chest, trying to stop himself from crying, but the tears continued to flow down his cheeks. Was it because of the sorrowful orchid? Xiongshi seemed to have thought of something. He wailed as he stood up. The smell of the sorrowful orchid could amplify the sadness in one's heart. He had originally planned to use it against the chef to make him express his sadness at losing his restaurant. In the end, he was the one who dug a hole for himself. The chef didn't cry, but Xiongshi was crying so hard that he almost couldn't catch his breath. He opened the lid of the alchemy furnace and drew out the alchemy fire within. The light from the fire dissipated, and the smell of the sorrowful orchid also dissipated. The sadness was too great, and he couldn't bear it all at once. Without the smell of the sorrowful orchid, Xiongshi finally stopped crying. Although he kept sobbing, he didn't continue to cry. He glared at Bufong and was so angry that his chest was about to explode. You killed my big bear. You killed my big bear, and you actually brought it up to the stage to show me. Xiongshi covered his mouth and looked at Bufong. He suddenly felt that he had underestimated this chef. He didn't expect him to be so vicious. Xiongshi cried again. Bufong looked at him with a puzzled expression. The corners of his mouth twitched. Bufong looked at the bear paw, then at Xiongshi, who was covering his mouth and crying. Was there some kind of relationship between the bear paw and Xiongshi? He really didn't know anything. He didn't do it on purpose. Don't cry. I will definitely make the bear paw delicious. I won't let this bear paw down. Bufong looked at Xiongshi, who was sobbing uncontrollably. He hesitated for a moment before speaking seriously. You actually want to cook it? Sob, 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 my big bear, ah. When Xiongshi heard Bufong's words, his whole body trembled. You killed my big bear, and you want to cook it? The saddest thing in the world was to see one's beloved big bear being cooked by someone. After saying that, Bufong ignored Xiongshi and focused on dealing with the bear's paw. He opened his mouth and spat out a ball of golden 10,000 bestial flames. The 10,000 bestial flames flew into the black turtle constellation walk. Bufong poured in the Heaven Alps spirit spring water that was brimming with spiritual energy. He also threw the bear paw into the water and soaked it. While he was soaking the bear paw, he began to prepare the other ingredients. This time, other than the bear paw, he had to prepare a large number of other ingredients. He cut the prepared spirit herbs into pieces. The spiritual energy dispersed into the air, making those who smelled it feel refreshed. Other than these spirit herbs, Bufong also prepared other spirit beast meat as supplementary ingredients. He took out a piece of supreme mantis prawn meat and cut it into pieces. He also chopped up several types of supreme beast meat as supplementary ingredients. He piled the pieces of meat to the side. When he was done, Bufong turned his gaze to the bear paw in the black turtle constellation walk. He increased the temperature of the 10,000 bestial flames. Instantly, the Heaven Alps spirit spring water in the wok began to boil. Gurgle! The bear paw seemed to be tumbling within the wok. A fishy smell permeated the air. Bufong furrowed his brows. After a while, he scooped up the bear paw and threw it into the ice-cold water. After washing the black turtle constellation wok, he prepared a pot of Heaven Alps spirit spring water. He also poured in a large amount of spirit herb powder, making the Heaven Alps spirit spring water extremely refreshing. With a flick of his finger, the dragon bone kitchen knife fell into Bufong's hand. Holding the knife, Bufong spun it around and scooped up the bear paw from the cold water. Holding the bear paw with one hand, Bufong's eyes narrowed. He pressed the knife against the bear paw. There was a layer of dead skin on the bear paw, which was extremely hard. Bufong flicked the knife and instantly cut through the dead skin. After cutting it, Bufong covered the bear paw with his hand, which was wrapped in true energy. He rubbed the bear paw, removing all the fur. He patted the bear paw to loosen it up a little. Next, Bufong began to display his dazzling knife skills. The gazes of the audience all fell on Bufong. It was not only because of the food he cooked, but also because of the skills he displayed, which made them exclaim in admiration. The knife flickered at an extremely fast speed. Every time the knife moved, a piece of bone would be gouged out. In just a short while, almost all the bones were dug out by him. With a flick of the knife, the bear paw was tossed into the air. Bufong calmly used the back of the knife to strike the bear paw. The speed of his hand was extremely fast, so fast that no one could catch it. Finally, with a thud, the bear paw landed on the bronze platform. The swollen bear paw seemed to be bouncing slightly, and there was even a faint spiritual energy enshrouding it. Bufong took out a jar of ice heart jade urn wine from the system's dimensional storage. He opened the lid and continued to process the bear paw. Xiongshi watched on helplessly as Bufong tormented his bear's paw. His heart was filled with grief and sorrow. He covered his mouth and wanted to cry again. Finally, the solemn judge could not bear to watch any longer. He walked over with a stern face. Hurry up and refine the elixir. The bear is being cooked, not you, Xiongshi. Why are you crying? Moreover, is that your bear? Why are you so sad? Let me kindly remind you that in this competition, your opponent is not just Bufang. If you lose, there are still more than 30 people who will compete with you for the ranking. The judge said solemnly. Xiongshi's body stiffened. He turned his head with difficulty and looked at the judge. When he saw the solemn expression on the judge's face, he could not help but want to cry again. That's my bear. Xiongshi covered his mouth. His eyes were filled with tears. He did not want to cry, but his heart was filled with anxiety. Smelling the fragrance of the meat in the air, he felt even more anxious. Chapter 5:26. Was the bear's paw delicious? Most people would think that the bear's paw was a delicacy, but in reality, that was not the case. Perhaps it was because of an ancient saying, "Fish is what I want, and bear's paw is what I want. If I can't have both, I'll give up on the fish and take the bear's paw." Everyone thought that the bear's paw was a rare delicacy, but in reality, it was not as delicious as they imagined. However, Bufang did not mind. Regardless of whether the bear's paw was delicious or not, he would try his best to cook it into a delicacy. Even if the taste of the bear's paw was terrible, it was still an ingredient of a divine realm spirit beast. How bad could it be? Bufang placed the bear's paw into the basin and poured the ice heart jade, wine into it. The fragrance of the wine spread, causing the unpleasant smell on the bear's paw to dissipate. Originally, he should have smeared some honey on it, but Bufang did not prepare any. Instead, he used the ice heart jade wine to remove the smell. The effects were similar. The ice heart jade wine was rich in spiritual energy, and with the addition of the wine, the spiritual energy within the wine started to flow. The broth in the black turtle constellation wok began to boil, and the spirit herb powder rolled around, releasing a fragrant smell. Bufang fished out the bear's paw that had been soaked for a while and placed it into the black turtle constellation wok to boil. Xiongshi finally stopped grieving. He knew that there was no point in continuing to grieve like this. He needed to do his best to complete the pill concoction this time around. Only by completing the concoction would he have the chance to defeat the culprit who had killed him, Big Bear. However, every time he thought of Chef cooking his big bear in front of him, his heart would ache. He did not know if it was the aftereffects of the sorrowful orchid or something else, but he felt like crying. However, he did not cry in the end. He forcefully held back his tears and focused his attention on the alchemy furnace. A ball of pink flame entered the furnace, and Xiongshi finally put his heart and soul into concocting the elixir. The farcical competition seemed to have returned to normal. Xiongshi's alchemy skills were very strong, and many of the audience were worried about Bufang. However, there were also many who felt that Xiongshi should be the one to worry about. After all, it was not uncommon for Bufang's opponents to have their furnaces explode. Bufang clasped his hands behind his back and seemed to be silently counting the time in his heart. After a long while, he opened his eyes and fished out the steaming hot bear paw from the black turtle constellation wok. The steaming hot bear paw exuded a meaty aroma, and the meaty aroma carried a peculiar flavor. After fishing out the bear paw, Bufang washed the black turtle constellation wok once again and poured in some spirit spring water. Then he added enough spirit herbs and placed the bear paw into the wok for the third time. This time, the boiling speed was very fast. As soon as the water boiled, Bufang fished out the bear paw. This time, Bufang seemed to be dealing with the bear paw for real. He took out all the ingredients and first added some oil into the black turtle constellation wok. He stir-fried the spirit herb that was filled with spirit energy. After stir-frying it for a while, he placed the bear paw that had been boiled 3 times into the wok. He sprinkled the supreme beast meat and some spirit herbs into the wok. Then, he poured in some broth and started to simmer. As he simmered, Bufang added some seasonings into the wok. Bufang did not cover the wok with a lid, so steam rose up and the aroma of the bear meat spread out. This aroma had a hint of fishy smell. However, this fishy smell was not smelly. Instead, it gave people a unique flavor. The audience's eyes lit up as they stared at Bu Fong's black turtle constellation wok. They couldn't help but whisper to each other. Many people were suddenly curious about the taste of the bear paw this time. The 5 grandmasters on the high platform watched solemnly. They had tasted the barbecue that Bu Fong cooked previously, and this time they got to see the bear paw. They wondered how the bear paw would taste and how effective it would be. Actually, it should be pretty good this time. Look, there's so many spirit herbs mixed in. It looks more complicated than refining elixirs. Isn't that right? Alchemists look much simpler than cooking, but because it's so simple, it feels like we can't bring out the full effects of the spirit herbs. Alchemists and chefs are different. There's no point in talking about this. The grandmasters discussed. They felt that this little chef's cooking skills were extraordinary. It seemed like he could provide them with some inspiration for refining elixirs. However, inspiration was something that was hard to grasp. Xiongshi had already entered into a state of refining elixirs. He seemed to have gone crazy, and his eyes were bloodshot. The energy on his body surged, and the pink flame in his furnace roiled. A fragrance of elixirs wafted out from his furnace. He placed the bear paw into the black turtle constellation wok and simmered it for half a day. The bear paw was cooked until it was soft, and the meat was almost transparent. The bear paw, with its crisscrossed muscles, exuded a different kind of temptation. It became more exquisite and more beautiful. Bu Fong took out a round blue and white porcelain plate and placed the simmered bear paw in the center of the plate. He also placed some spirit herbs around it as decoration. The supreme beast meat that had been simmered together with the bear paw was placed around the bear paw. It was like a red flower set off by a green leaf. Steam rose from the meat, and the bear paw seemed to become even more enshrouded. However, this didn't mean that Bu Fong had finished cooking the dish. However, just as Bu Fong was about to finish the last step, Xiongshir's angry roar came from afar. With a bang, the slightly hovering alchemy furnace smashed onto the bronze platform, causing the entire arena to tremble violently. Xiongshi was sweating profusely, and the tuft of hair on his head was in a mess. His eyes were bloodshot, and he seemed to be a little violent. He stared fixedly at Bu Fong, or rather, at the bear paw. He gritted his teeth and waved his hand. In an instant, the lid of the furnace opened, and a dense wave of energy spread out. The energy wave was formless, and it spread out in all directions like ripples. A pink-colored elixir floated out of the furnace, emitting waves of energy. There were 2 patterns on the surface of the elixir, and it glowed brightly. He actually finished refining the elixir. This speed was extremely fast. The audience finally noticed Xiongshi, and their eyes widened. He finished refining the elixir, just like that? So fast. It seemed like the furnace didn't explode this time. What a pity. Many of the audience members, who didn't see the furnace explode, couldn't help but reveal expressions of pity. Xiongshi stared at Bu Fong, his hand tightly gripping the elixir. Bu Fong glanced at Xiongshi, then retracted his gaze and started preparing for the last step. With a twist of the golden dragon bone kitchen knife, Bu Fong cut the ingredients and poured some oil into the black turtle constellation wok. Then, he added the ingredients in the broth and began to stir-fry. After stir-frying for a while, the broth became thicker and thicker. Rumble. The broth was bubbling, and every time a bubble popped, a wisp of spiritual energy would rise. The thick broth had a ruddy color, and it looked like the sauce Bu Fong used when he cooked sweet and sour ribs. However, compared to the sauce, this broth was much thicker. Bu Fong turned off the fire and scooped up the wok. He used a ladle to pull through the thick silk thread and poured the thick broth onto the simmered bear paw. Sizzle. In an instant, hot steam rose into the air, and a fragrant aroma surged out of the wok. The aroma wafted through the air and instantly filled the entire arena. The audience instantly smelled the aroma, and their faces revealed intoxicated expressions. It smells so good. As expected, the products of this little chef are extraordinary. Although it doesn't smell as good as the barbecue last time, this aroma seems to be restrained. It's a little different. The aroma of this dish isn't the strongest, but it's the most flavorful one. The audience seemed to have turned into seasoned diners, and they began to comment on the dish. Picking up a plump white radish, Bufang glanced at Xiongshi, and the golden dragon bone kitchen knife danced in the air. The audience felt their vision blur, and they realized that the radish had been carved into the shape of a roaring bear. The might of a bear was unrivaled when the bear was placed on the plate. The dish was finally completed. Red braised bear paw. Done. The golden dragon bone kitchen knife twirled in his hand, and Bufang finally gripped it tightly. His face was expressionless. Gulp. The audience couldn't help but swallow their saliva, and they stared at the rosy bear paw. Their appetites were slightly aroused. Although the aroma wasn't very strong, it had a special charm to it, and the audience found it hard to bear. Xiongshi looked at the sparkling and translucent bear paw on the blue and white porcelain plate, and he couldn't help but feel sad in his heart. My bear. When the judge saw that the two of them had finished cooking, he walked to the center of the two. He looked at the bear paw with a strange gaze. Looking at the exquisite and beautiful red braised bear paw, the judge couldn't help but swallow his saliva. He had eaten many elixirs, but this kind of delicious food, it was his first time coming into contact with it. In the sky, a majestic clamor suddenly came from above. It was unknown when the 5 grandmasters had appeared on the stage. The judge was taken aback, and he respectfully bowed to them. This round is a little special, so we will be the judges, Grandmaster Xianming said with his hands behind his back. The other grandmasters nodded their heads solemnly, and their gazes landed on the bear paw. This dish, what is it called? Grandmaster Xianming looked at Bufang and asked. The few of them surrounded the bear paw and looked at it. They realized that the bear paw was translucent, and there seemed to be spiritual energy circulating within it. Compared to the last time they roasted it, it seemed to be even more charming. Xiongshi held his 2-mark spirit pill, and he was a little dumbfounded. Why did the 5 grandmasters come down? If they came down, so be it. But can't they give me some attention? I'm the victim here. The bear paw that kid used to cook. It's my big bear. Xiongshi suddenly felt as though he had been abandoned by the whole world, and an indescribable sadness welled up in his heart. Is it this dish? Red braised bear paw. The taste is not bad. Bufang glanced at Grandmaster Xianming and said calmly. After saying that, he picked up his signboard and started to seriously advertise his dish. Everyone was already used to his stiff advertising, and they were more interested in the taste of the red braised bear paw. The grandmasters looked at each other, and they picked up their chopsticks. After clinking them against each other on the bronze platform, they started to eat the bear paw. When the chopsticks came into contact with the bear paw, the grandmasters were instantly shocked. That was because the bear paw was incomparably soft. With a light push, a hole was torn open, and a resplendent radiance burst forth from the bear paw, illuminating the surroundings. Chapter 5:27. When the light shot out from the bear paw, everyone couldn't help but let out a gasp of surprise. That was because it was too dazzling. It was so beautiful that it intoxicated everyone. The resplendent light, coupled with the rich fragrance, created an intoxicating feeling that no one could resist. Another dish that can shine. Grandmaster Xianming's eyes narrowed as he said seriously. For a dish to shine, it meant that the concentration of spirit energy in the dish had reached a very high level. Otherwise, it would not be able to cause a qualitative change and emit such a resplendent light. The bear paw was covered in a layer of thick red broth. The broth was boiling hot, and it accentuated the outline of the bear paw. It looked very sparkling and translucent. His chopsticks landed on the opening of the bear paw. The tender bear paw was not as hard as before, but it was not easy to pick it up. It was actually a little slippery. Grandmaster Xianming's chopsticks were actually unable to pick up the bear paw. The slightly embarrassed Grandmaster Xianming took a few more chopsticks and finally picked up a piece of sparkling bear paw. The bear paw was emitting hot steam, and it was densely covered with roots. It looked like the roots of a horned dragon, and a thick broth swirled around it, emitting hot steam. Although the aroma was fragrant, it wasn't a very rich fragrance. When the bear paw entered his mouth, a wave of bear meat smell spread out. However, it wasn't smelly, and it didn't make people feel disgusted. It was because of this smell that the bear meat was more delicious and unique. The bear meat was very chewy. Because the bear paw was densely covered with roots, it didn't melt in the mouth. Even if the bear meat was cooked until it was soft, it would still be the same. However, after chewing it, there was a different flavor. Munch munch, Grandmaster Xianming opened his eyes wide as he ate. The others looked at him and licked their lips curiously. How is it? How does the dish taste this time? Grandmaster Gu he asked impatiently. He had wanted to eat it for a long time. However, because this was Xianming's home ground, he had to give him some face. Soft but not greasy, fishy but not smelly. The taste is excellent. Grandmaster Xianming ate a few pieces of bear paw, closed his eyes, and replied. His mouth was filled with the taste of bear meat. That taste made him unable to stop. He had never tasted such a delicious and unique taste before. To be able to cook such delicious dishes, this little chef was indeed not ordinary. This was different from the previous barbecue. In the previous barbecue, this little chef seemed to be opportunistic. However, this time, he had real culinary skills. The deliciousness of a bear's paw was not only because of its taste, but also because of its medicinal value. Bear's paw was actually a very precious medicinal ingredient. Moreover, this bear paw was a divine realm bear paw. Just the energy contained within it would bring boundless benefits to the consumer, not to mention the powerful ability to purify the impurities in the human body. When Grandmaster Gu He and the others heard Grandmaster Xianming's evaluation, they were shocked. They didn't expect Grandmaster Xianming's evaluation to be so high. All the more reason for them to give it a try. Therefore, when Grandmaster Gu He put down his chopsticks, the other masters followed suit without hesitation. The bear paw was quickly divided and eaten. When a few pieces of bear paw meat entered their stomachs, the eyes of the few grandmasters widened. Their aged faces turned rosy, as if they had experienced something unknown. This feeling, I can't use words to describe it. I feel like I've lost my youth. Grandmaster Gu He closed his eyes, and his face was flushed red. His white beard fluttered in the wind as he lamented. Xiong sure wanted to cry, but no tears came out. My big bear made you feel your lost youth? Was your youth a bear? My big bear. How did it become a meal for so many people? Xiong sure felt wronged, and tears welled up in his eyes. The main point was, up until now, no one cared about the elixir in his hands. This was the greatest sorrow. What was the purpose of Big Bear's sacrifice? It was so that he could defeat his opponent in this competition. But what happened in the end? Everyone wanted to eat Big Bear. They ignored him. The sorrow that rushed into his chest made Xiongshi feel so sad that he couldn't even breathe. Sorrow, it was simply too sorrowful. Let me help you take a look. Your chances of winning this round aren't high. The judge, who was standing by the side, saw that Xiongshir's expression was changing 3 times per second. He couldn't bear to see him like this. Xiongshir's eyes lit up, and he was so touched that he almost cried. He wondered if he was suffering from the side effects of eating the sorrowful orchid. Why did he feel like crying so often? I have never seen such an expression on the faces of the teachers. It seems like they are very satisfied with this chef's dish. Although you finished the elixir quickly, it is impossible for you to defeat him. The judge sighed and took out a jade talisman. The jade talisman emitted a bright light, and an array enveloped the area. The judge took the elixir from Xiongshir's hands and placed it into the array. The array emitted a bright light. After all, it was a 2-mark spirit pill. The pink elixir was like an exquisite work of art. The 2 lines on it moved slowly, like a winding divine dragon. It was very cool. The quality of the spirit energy has reached the required level. A 2-mark spirit pill is considered a high-end elixir in this year's Magical Hand Conference. However, it will be difficult for you to defeat this little chef, unless the effects of your elixir are very special and innovative. The judge said. In the distance, the 5 grandmasters were still gathered in front of Bu Fong's bronze platform. eating the bear paw nonstop. The sound of their mouths slurping could be heard, and many of the spectators were speechless. This scene was transmitted to the entire Pill Palace through the projection array. Both Heavenly Pill City and Heavenly Shine City saw it. Looking at the alchemy grandmasters, who were once high up and respected, eating nonstop like gluttons, everyone was somewhat dumbfounded. They felt as though their worldview had been turned upside down. Were they still the alchemy grandmasters they had once known? Some people looked at the essence of the situation, and they had a completely different view of the little chef who had caused all of this. His dazzling cooking skills and his precise control of true energy were all proof of this little chef's amazing abilities and standards. Through the projection array, they realized that cooking wasn't an easy thing to do. At the very least, he saw from Bufong all kinds of cooking skills, which could not be achieved without a certain amount of practice. The plate of bear paw was finally finished, and even the thick sauce was licked clean. The 5 grandmasters looked at Bufong with satisfaction on their faces. "Little chef, your skills are not bad. Work hard, you've won this round," Grandmaster Xian Ming said with a smile. He realized that the more he looked at Bufong, the more he liked him. This kid was someone from Heavenly Miss City, and he was representing Heavenly Miss City in a magical hand conference. To be able to enter the top 10 as a dark horse, Grandmaster Xian Ming, felt proud. "Grandmasters, you haven't seen contestant Xiong Shi's elixir," the judge said on behalf of Xiong Shi when he saw Grandmaster Xian Ming declare Bufong the winner. Grandmaster Xian Ming was taken aback, and he slowly turned around. With his hand behind his back, he looked at the judge. "Didn't you already test it? The spiritual energy in the elixir is at the level of a 2-mark spirit pill, but have you tested its effects?" The judge was taken aback, and he shook his head. "Try it, and you'll know why," declared the little chef the winner. Grandmaster Xian Ming was too lazy to say anything else, and he nodded at Bufong. After the 5 grandmasters ate their fill, they left. The judge furrowed his brows, and he looked at Grandmaster Xian Ming's back. He then looked at Xiong Shi, who was staring at him with wide eyes. Could it be that this elixir had some kind of flaw? The judge clenched his teeth, and he stuffed the elixir into his mouth. The spiritual energy within this pink elixir was extremely dense. After all, it was a 2-mark spirit pill, and the ingredients used were all high-grade medicinal ingredients. The moment the elixir entered his mouth, the judge felt the true energy within his body stir. His hair fluttered, and his eyes emitted a bright light. His pores opened, and his hair stood on end. Behind him, the 3 supreme beings' shackles swayed, and the pressure of the heavens and earth emanated from his body. Without a doubt, this was an elixir that could increase one's battle prowess. However, the judge had a strange expression on his face, as he felt that something was amiss. What was amiss was that there was an inexplicable sadness in his heart. That sadness appeared out of nowhere. It was as if he had ruined a furnace of elixirs when he went out in the morning. The judge's lips trembled, and his eyes became moist. His heart was filled with sadness. Why did he feel so sad? It was only because he had ruined a furnace of elixirs when he went out in the morning. Sob, sob. This is so unbearable. I want to cry. Why do I feel so sad? What happened? The judge covered his mouth and started to cry. Bean-sized teardrops flowed down from the corners of his eyes. What exactly happened? Where did this sadness come from? The judge was gasping for breath as he sobbed. His entire being was filled with sadness, and the audience was dumbfounded. Xiong Shi was dumbfounded. How could this be? Why was the referee crying all of a sudden? Suddenly, Xiong Shi felt as if he had been struck by lightning. Could it be because of the sorrowful orchid? Oh my God, did I not dispose of the sorrowful orchid? Xiong Shi's huge body trembled, and in the next instant, he remembered that he had dispersed the smoke from the sorrowful orchid. However, due to the shock of Big Bear's death and the spread of the sorrowful orchid, he had forgotten to dispose of the remaining sorrowful orchid in the furnace. Hence, he had mixed the sorrowful orchid with the elixir and refined it. Although the effects of the elixir were not affected, the person who had swallowed the elixir was sad. I really didn't do it on purpose. Xiongshi was about to cry again. He really didn't do it on purpose. He couldn't control himself at that time. The judge stared at Xiongshi as he cried. He finally understood why Grandmaster Xianming was so sure that Bufang would win. Xiongshi had made such a huge mistake. That was simply asking for his life. The judge glared at Xiongshi hatefully, and tears streamed down his cheeks again. After he announced the winner's name, he covered his mouth and rushed down the stage. The sound of his sobs was heart-wrenching. Bufang stared blankly at the judge who had rushed down the stage. He raised his head to look at Xiongshi, and the corners of his mouth twitched as he nodded his head. At that moment, Xiongshi's heart was filled with sadness. He had lost. He had actually lost. When he met Bufang's gaze, Xiongshi's heart was filled with uncontrollable sadness. "Looking at you reminds me of my bear," Xiongshi cried as he covered his mouth and rushed down the stage as well. Only Bufang was left with a dumbfounded expression. Could someone tell him what had happened? Buzz, all of a sudden, a solemn voice rang out in Bufang's mind. It was the system's voice that he hadn't heard in a long time. "Congratulations to the host for completing the temporary mission. Spread the name of the Cloud Mist restaurant throughout the entire Heavenly Mist City within 3 months. The reward will now be issued." Chapter 528. Sorceress and Sheng, Crazy Xiong, and the rest of the alchemists were already quite strong. If they wanted to fight for the championship, those alchemists would be much stronger than Sorceress and Sheng. At that time, it would be extremely difficult. "Next, we will draw your opponents." Grandmaster Xianming stood on the stage, and his eyes were filled with majesty as he scanned the crowd. Grandmaster Xianming said as he explained the rules of the competition. Nangong Wuk didn't know whether to laugh or cry. However, he was still a little excited. Old Boo, why did you finish the competition so quickly? Did you win?" When Nangong Wuk saw Bufang, he was startled and asked in astonishment. "To help Nangong Wuk?" Grandmaster Xianming's face darkened. Nangong Wuk and Bufang were both from Heavenly Mist City. Wasn't this an internal conflict? This was simply, he stood there in a daze. Then his eyes lit up and the corners of his mouth curled upwards. He seemed to be excited. Bufang glanced at him expressionlessly. Why was this kid so righteous? After walking down the stage, he saw that the other contestants were still fighting intensely. Wait a minute. Old Boo, you won. Doesn't that mean that you are also in the top 10 like me? Nangong Wuk seemed to have thought of something and turned his head to look at Bufang. This was the correct way to start the Magical Hand Conference. Bufang was a dark horse that couldn't be any darker. He was a complete anomaly. The competition of the top 50 has ended. I believe that everyone has displayed their true abilities and fought hard for the ranking. This ranking will bring you honor and status in the Pill Palace. Your efforts did not go to waste. You have all grown and gained honor. Compared to wasting time here, Bufang was more inclined to go back to his shop. After all, the crystals he earned from his business were used to increase his cultivation. These 10 people were also the top 10 contestants that remained on the stage. Grandmaster Xianming was in a good mood. This time, 2 of the top 10 contestants were from Heavenly Mist City. Compared to the previous competition, they were much stronger. Why did he enter the competition so innocently in the first place? "Grandmaster, can I choose to give up? I don't want to compete in the top 10 anymore." He originally thought that he would be the champion of the Magical Hand Conference. However, he wasn't confident that he would win. After all, these alchemists weren't useless. Could it be that this fellow was using his beauty? The competition of the top 50 had finally ended. In the previous Magical Hand Conference, the Heavenly Mist City had ended. Duan Yun was ranked 40th, which was near the end of the list. Presumably, his performance was not very good. Many of the audience were looking forward to the competition of the top 10. Who would the Dark Horse Chef's opponent be? After Nangong Wuk finished his match, his whole body was filled with dense true energy. His aura fluctuated and his expression was extremely solemn. Nangong Wuk rubbed his hair and walked to Bufang's side. He found a place to sit down and said awkwardly, "Actually, I also won." "All right, Everyone here are the top 10 contestants of the Magical Hand Conference. In the next 2 weeks, we will announce the final ranking of the top 10 contestants. Just by looking at Bufong's calm expression, Bufong family Wu knew that he had won. However, he understood that breaking through from the Supreme Being realm to the Divine realm was a huge breakthrough. This was a hurdle that many people would be stuck for their entire lives. As for him, he only needed enough crystals to break through. What was there for him to complain about? Bufong nodded his head solemnly. With his hands clasped behind his back, he walked down the stage with a pensive look on his face. Kung Pao chicken was a famous dish. It was famous for its spicy flavor, and many people had heard of it. For a moment, Nangong Wuk family Wu became silent. All right, he still felt conflicted about winning in such a manner. Did a powerful opponent finally make a chef serious? The top 10 contestants were finally decided. Bufong looked at Nangong Wuk in astonishment. If he remembered correctly, Nangong Wuk's opponent was Yang Meiji, right? When it came to cultivation, Bufong felt a headache coming on. He didn't feel like he was going to make a breakthrough. He had been in business for so long, but he still didn't feel like he was going to make a breakthrough. This made him a little anxious. Grandmaster Gu He, who was standing beside Grandmaster Xianming, took out a jade talisman and looked at the crowd with a smile on his face. The surrounding spectators were shocked. Finally, the main event was about to begin. Could it be that he knew that he would have to face a powerful opponent after advancing to the top 10? If there was no reward, Bufong felt that there was no need for him to participate in this competition. He could just take the walk and go home. As for Bufong, he raised his head and looked at the name of his opponent. However, when he looked at it, his expression became a little weird. The 50 contestants stood there quietly, waiting for the final evaluation. Bufong stared at the name on the screen for a long time. Finally, the corners of Bufong's mouth curled up, revealing a smile. The 10 contestants who didn't have their rankings announced were the top 10 contestants of the Magical Hand Conference. Among them were Bufong and Nangong Wuk. The competition just now was full of twists and turns, causing Nangong Wuk to be dumbfounded. Do I look like that kind of person? Of course, I rejected him righteously. Nangong Wuk stared at Bufong and said, "The 9 Hell King flame doesn't belong to me anymore. If it doesn't belong to me, I won't accept it. This is my principle. Congratulations to the host for completing the temporary task. The temporary task reward will now be issued." Reward? If I remember correctly, the reward for this task is the cooking method of Kung Pao chicken, right? Bufong narrowed his eyes and thought to himself. Bufong naturally knew how to cook Kung Pao chicken, but his cooking method was different from his system's. There was definitely a reason why the system would give him this dish as a reward. In any case, his goal in participating in this competition was to complete the task. Now that he had completed the task, it was time for him to pack up and return home to open his restaurant. What was the point of wasting this time? When the system's solemn and serious voice rang out in Bufong's ears, Bufong was stunned. The spectators who were gossiping were extremely excited. After a boring night, their blood started to boil. Give up? The dark horse that made it to the top 10 chose to give up? Every Magical Hand Conference held a competition like this. Therefore, everyone was already used to it. However, if they knew that Bufong was seriously considering whether he should return with the wok, would they be so depressed that they would vomit blood? Grandmaster Xianming spoke for a long time before announcing the ranking of the top 50. What surprised Bufong was that Xiongshi was actually ranked 15th. The elixir that made the judges so sad that they had difficulty breathing actually had such a ranking. It seemed like the effects of the elixir were pretty good. However, it was indeed a 2-mark spirit pill. These 10 people were the future hope of the Pill Palace. Of course, that chef was considered a random entrant. However, being able to make it to the top 10 as a dark horse was already beyond their expectations. Nangong Wuk won against Yang Meiji. Bufong looked at Nangong Wuk in astonishment. When the rankings were announced, some people were happy while others were worried. Grandmaster Xianming's solemn face couldn't help but reveal a faint smile as he looked at the 10 people. So you accepted it? After all, the heaven and earth obsidian flame is quite useful. With his hands clasped behind his back, he slowly walked down the stage. Bufong was thinking about whether he should directly return to his restaurant and open it for business. The spectators were a little confused. They didn't understand why this dark horse chef would suddenly become so serious. The spectators were all stunned. In the next instant, an uproar broke out. Everyone's faces were filled with excitement. That's right, he had been participating in the competition for so long, but he still didn't know if there were any rewards for participating in this competition. A ripple spread out, and a beam of light shot into the sky. In an instant, the list of the top 10 contestants appeared on the light screen. Then, do you think it's possible for us to be opponents in the next round? The two of us will compete in the top 10. Just thinking about it makes me excited. As he thought about it, Bufong really wanted to do it. Grandmaster Gu He smiled as he stood beside him. He also clasped his hands behind his back. The aura of the two of them formed a sharp contrast. After pondering for a long time, only Bufong was left on the stage. One had to know that the top 10 contestants on the stage, other than Nangong Wuk, were all famous and powerful alchemists in the Pill Palace. None of them were weaker than Sorceress and Sheng. Time passed, and night fell gradually. 2 moons slowly floated in the sky, hanging high in the sky. The spectators were suddenly moved. This chef finally had a sense of urgency for the competition. There would be a match every day. The format of the match would be the same as before. The winner would advance to the next round, and the loser would be eliminated. This would continue until the top 10 were determined. Bufong listened attentively. Was he excited? Why didn't he feel anything? Bufong versus Nangong Wuk. The spectators widened their eyes. They were terrified. Now that he had completed his temporary task, there was no need for him to advertise. Hence, he kept the board. It would look weird if he were to carry it around. The alchemists who were able to last until now were all capable alchemists. Their alchemy skills were famous in the Pill Palace. When they displayed their skills, they were dazzling and mesmerizing, attracting cheers from the audience. Nangong Wuk versus the Dark Horse Chef? Wasn't the relationship between the two of them very good? This was going to be fun. They could watch a love-hate relationship. Central Plaza, Arena Number 1. Up until now, Bufong didn't seem to know about the rewards of the Magical Hand Conference. Could it be that there were no rewards? He didn't hear anything about it. Thinking about the chance to compete with Bufong, Nangong Wuk excitedly chattered nonstop. The gloominess in his heart had almost dissipated. All kinds of alchemy flames surged. Crazy Xiong was too sad. He covered his mouth and ran down the stage. Standing beside him, Nangong Wuk's face kept changing. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. After completing his temporary task, Bufong became lazy. In fact, he didn't even want to participate in the competition. On the light screen, F***CK. Could it be that the two of them had some unknown relationship? His gaze landed on Grandmaster Xianming, and he calmly said, "What kind of gaze is that? That woman, Yang Meiji." Halfway through the competition, she suddenly abandoned the furnace. She even said that she would return the heaven and earth obsidian flame to me. Nangong Wuk said with a slight headache, "Old Boo, my jinx is really accurate. In the next round, you and I will be opponents." After a long time, Duan Yun walked over dejectedly. He had lost. In the end, he still lost. As for his ranking, it would have to wait for the final announcement. Bufong looked at Nangong Wuk in surprise and blinked his eyes. Has the temporary task been completed? So, entering the top 10 of the Magical Hand Conference means that the temporary task has been completed. It isn't that difficult. The corners of Bufong's mouth curled up as he softly muttered. When Bufong said this, everyone was stunned. That was because tonight, the rankings of the top 50 would be announced. But Bufong looked around and put away the signboard. Chapter 529. Not going to compete? Bufong's voice reverberated throughout the entire plaza, causing the originally noisy plaza to turn silent. Everyone widened their eyes in confusion as they looked at Bufong. The darkest dark horse of this Magical Hand Conference, the one who had defeated so many genius alchemists and entered the top 10, was actually not going to compete. Was he going to give up? The audience quivered. Originally, there were a few in the audience who were extremely sleepy and were squinting their eyes. However, after hearing Bufang's words, they became much more clear-headed. Unbelievable, incomprehensible. They suddenly realized that they were unable to keep up with this chef's train of thought. Why would he want to give up? He had already entered the top 10, but he actually wanted to give up? Wasn't that the same as climbing a mountain and suddenly jumping down? Grandmaster Xin Ming was also slightly stunned. After a long time, he finally understood what Bufang meant. His originally slightly dark face instantly turned even darker. He suddenly felt a little regretful. He was previously so happy, but now, two troublesome matters had appeared. First, there was internal strife between the Heavenly Mist City's participants. Now, the most popular dark horse of this magical hand conference wanted to give up. Was he purposely trying to annoy him? Why are you not competing? Do you think the magical hand conference is a game? If you want to compete, then compete. If you don't want to compete, then so be it. Grandmaster Xin Ming angrily glared at Bufang, and his aura surged. He coldly stared at Bufang and said, he was really a little angry, and his tone was somewhat impolite. Nangong Wuk was startled. He didn't understand why Bufang would want to give up. Old Bu, what are you doing? Why are you giving up? Are you afraid of being stepped on by me? Nangong Wuk? Don't be afraid. If you don't compete, how will you know despair? Nangong Wuk hurriedly said as he moved to Bufang's side. Bufang was speechless. This Nangong Wuk's skin was still as thick as before. However, to be honest, he really didn't want to compete anymore. First of all, his purpose in participating in this competition was to complete the temporary task. Now that the task was completed, he didn't need to waste time on this competition. If he had the time, he might as well use it to run his business and gather enough essence crystals to break through as soon as possible to become a God Realm expert. At that time, he would have enough true qi to cook more advanced dishes. Bufang opened his mouth and was about to say something. Nangong Wuk furrowed his brows. He raised his hand and tilted his head. Don't be afraid. With our relationship, I, Nangong Wuk, won't let you lose too much face. After all, you are my brother-in-law. Brother-in-law my ass. The corner of Bufang's mouth twitched. Suddenly, he had the urge to beat this guy up. He had given him a ladder, and this guy wanted to ascend to the heavens? I don't mean to disrespect this competition. It's just that, I've already exhausted my limited abilities. Making it to the top 10 is my limit, Bufang said seriously after thinking for a while. Looking at his sincere gaze, Grandmaster Xin Ming almost believed him. However, Grandmaster Xin Ming was also suspicious. Maybe Bufang had really exhausted his limited abilities? Bufang's explanation caused an uproar among the crowd. The biggest dark horse of the Magical Hand Conference had exhausted his limited abilities? Was he going to give up on the competition because he had run out of methods? This was a huge matter. Everyone was so shocked that they were fried on the outside and tender on the inside. No one would have thought that such a thing would happen. Exhausted his limited abilities? Who are you trying to fool, Sorceress and Shang? Nangong Wuk and the rest naturally rolled their eyes when they heard Bufang's words. Exhausted his limited abilities? Who would believe that? Buddha jumps over the wall soup, sweet and sour ribs. Honorbu didn't even take out those dishes. Did he really think that he had run out of methods? Those who hadn't eaten at the Cloud Mist restaurant before might not know, but how could they, the regular customers, not know Honorbu's methods? TSK. What a pity. I still wanted to compete with the biggest dark horse of this year. I didn't think that he would run out of methods. When the top 10 contestants on the stage heard Bufang's words, they all took it seriously. For a chef to be able to enter the top 10, it was honestly not easy. The person who spoke was a youth with an elegant demeanor. He was extremely scholarly, but his eyes were extremely sharp. This person was one of the top 10 contestants of this year's Magical Hand Conference. He was a genius alchemist from Heavenly Shine City, the disciple of Grandmaster Yao Guang, Mao Shi. He was originally not convinced that a chef was able to enter the top 10. Now that he heard that the other party had exhausted his limited abilities and was about to give up, he decided to add insult to injury and ridicule him. The other contestants all laughed as they looked at Bu Fong meaningfully. Mu Bai was a genius alchemist from Heavenly Pill City. He was one of the hot favorites to win this year's Magical Hand Conference. He looked at Bu Fong with a gentle smile, but he didn't say anything. He felt that this little chef was not simple. How could a chef who could kill in Sheng be simple? As in Sheng's senior, he was naturally clear about her abilities. Although that lass was a little crazy, her alchemy skills had improved a lot. Old Bu, don't give up. Think about it again. At most, you could just lose to me in the arena. That's better than giving up. It'll be ugly if you give up, Nangong Wuk said in a serious tone. Bu Fong looked at Nangong Wuk expressionlessly. The saying that a despicable person would be invincible was indeed true. He felt that he shouldn't give up. In the next round, he would use the Buddha jumps over the wall soup or something to let Nangong Wuk feel despair. This clown's words were really too infuriating. Bu Fong, the Magical Hand Conference, is the most important competition of the Pill Palace. It is not a place where you can do whatever you want. In the next round, you better compete obediently. There is no such thing as giving up in a Magical Hand Conference. That is, unless you admit defeat in the arena. Grandmaster Xian Ming coldly glanced at Bu Fong. Originally, he had a good impression of this chef. Now, his good impression of him had disappeared. After saying those ruthless words, he turned around and left. Grandmaster Gu, he was also a little speechless. This little chef really knew how to cause trouble. After giving Mu Bai an encouraging look, he also turned around and left. With the departure of the Grandmasters, the entire Central Plaza was in an uproar. This year's Dark Horse wanted to give up, but couldn't. Was he really out of tricks? Or was he willing to sacrifice himself for Nangong Wuk? Was there some unspeakable secret between the two of them? The audience was really too curious. Mao Shi coldly looked at Bu Fong and turned his head away in disdain. Giving up meant that this fellow had a guilty conscience. It seemed like he really didn't have any tricks up his sleeves. How embarrassing. If he didn't have the ability, he shouldn't have participated in the Magical Hand Conference. Since you want to give up, why did you participate? You even caused my Sheng to not be able to enter the top 50. Do you know how big your sin is? Mao Shi coldly said. You're in Sheng? Bu Fong was dumbfounded. What was going on? Sorceress and Sheng had some sort of relationship with this Xiao Bai's face? Don't let me meet you in the competition of the top 10. If not, I will definitely make you cry on a bronze platform. Oh, why am I talking to someone who wants to give up? You won't have the chance to meet me. After saying those ruthless words, Mao Shi left with his hands behind his back. He looked like a chicken that had just won a fight. Bu Fong was caught off guard and was somewhat dumbfounded by his pretentious act. Nangong Wuk's mouth twitched as he said, This Mao Shi is pursuing big breasts, and this is something that everyone knows. Just treat it as if he is farting. Aren't you going to lose to me in the next round? You won't have the chance to meet him. Bu Fong suddenly had the urge to use the Black Turtle Constellation Wok to smash this clown to death. Nangong Wuk's act had caught him off guard. Too lazy to care about him, Bu Fong turned around and left the stage. Since he wanted to participate in the competition, he would participate in it. 3 days later was the competition between him and Nangong Wuk. To be honest, Bu Fong did not have much interest in it. Since that was the case, he would give Nangong Wuk some good fortune. After returning to the Cloud Mist restaurant, Bu Fong stretched his body. Another day had passed, and he did not open for business again. When he entered the restaurant, he saw Lord Go and Yu leisurely lying on the dining table, staring at him. Bu Fong yawned. These two gluttons under the expectant gazes of a man and a dog. Bu Fong walked into the kitchen and prepared to cook for these two gluttons. However, he took this opportunity to receive the system's reward for completing the abrupt mission, the cooking method of Kung Pao chicken. Kung Pao chicken, also known as Kung Pao chicken, was incomparably spicy and was a very appetizing dish. As he looked at the cooking method of Kung Pao chicken provided by the system, he began to prepare the ingredients. Tonight, he did not plan to cook sweet and sour ribs and dragon blood rice. Instead, he planned to cook Kung Pao chicken. After washing his hands and wiping off the sparkling water stains, Bu Fong bent down and took out an iron cage from the cupboard. Within the cage, there was a chicken that seemed to be burning with flames. The heavenly flame chicken is a supreme spirit beast. Its whole body is burning with beast flames. Its fighting prowess is not strong, but its movement speed is very fast. It is able to soar in the air and is a supreme beast that is extremely difficult to capture. Its meat is fragrant and tender, and it is rich in spiritual energy. It lives by eating spirit herbs and grows by drinking fire. It is a high-quality ingredient, the system introduced to Bufang. A chicken that could fly. Bufang was stunned. He opened the iron cage and extended his hand. He grabbed the chicken by its wings and pulled it out of the cage. The beast flames were burning fiercely. Bufang's palm was covered with true energy, so it did not feel hot. Instead, it felt warm. Cluck, cluck, cluck. After pulling the chicken out of the iron cage, the heavenly flame chicken suddenly let out a loud cry. That cry was like a thunderclap, giving Bufang a fright. Lord Go, who was lying outside, also raised its head. You also stared at the direction of the kitchen in astonishment. What was Onerbu doing? Cluck, cluck, cluck. The chicken's cries continued, and it even began to struggle. It wanted to break free from Bufang's restraints and spread its wings to soar. This was a chicken with dreams, Bufang thought in his heart. However, how could he let this chicken fly away just like that? Woof! What the hell was it crying out for? Be quiet. Lord Go was waiting for food. Lord Go could not bear to listen to it anymore. Lord Go had an instinctive aversion to the chicken's cries. Suddenly, it let out a bark that carried a huge pressure. The heavenly flame chicken was so frightened that its neck stiffened and it trembled in fear. When a chicken with dreams met a dog that knew how to eat meat, what was there to talk about dreams? Bufang was very satisfied. This chicken was no longer tormenting him, which saved him a lot of trouble. Plucking the feathers, preparing the chicken. In a short while, a majestic heavenly flame chicken was plucked clean and thrown into the basin. Bufang held the dragon bone kitchen knife, pulled it out, and prepared to use the chicken breast to cook Kung Pao chicken. Chapter 530. Although it was already late at night, the central region of the heavenly mist city was still brightly lit. All sorts of lights flickered and illuminated the entire city, making it seem as though it was a city that never sleeps. Within the towering bronze buildings, all sorts of lights shone. This was the flourishing Pill City, Heavenly Mist City. Beneath one of the towering buildings, a bronze gate opened and two figures slowly walked out. Misha and Tong, he were wrapped in black robes. The two of them walked out of the building, and after looking around, they tightened their robes and walked into the distance. The two of them walked very quickly, and in a short while, they walked out of the area filled with tall buildings. They walked out of the city at lightning speed, and their speed became faster and faster. In a short while, the two of them appeared at the city gate and stood beneath the towering city walls of the heavenly mist city. The bronze city gate was incomparably majestic, and there were many arrays carved on it. A majestic and oppressive aura was emitted from the arrays. Misha looked at the city gate in awe. There were 3 great pill cities in the Pill Palace, and every single one of them was extremely prosperous and majestic. Tonghi, on the other hand, didn't really care. He looked at the city gate and didn't really care about it. The two of them stood at the city gate, and when the gate was wide open, the surrounding guards of the Pill City looked at them solemnly. However, since the two of them didn't do anything, the guards didn't do anything. The inspection of the Pill City city gate was extremely serious. People with unknown identities wouldn't be allowed into the Pill City. After all, the Pill City was an important area of the Pill Palace, and it was the economic center of the Pill Palace. Naturally, they had to treat it seriously. Misha and Tong, he waited for a long time before a carriage made of spirit beasts slowly approached them from outside the city gate. The spirit beast that was pulling the bronze carriage was incomparably pure and holy. It had a pair of wings on its back, and the aura it emitted was extremely terrifying. The hearts of the guards trembled. This was actually a divine realm spirit beast. Using a divine realm spirit beast to pull a carriage. Who exactly was the person in the carriage? The guards didn't dare to be negligent. After the coachman verified the identity of the owner of the carriage, they let the carriage pass. "It's here." He looked at the carriage that was approaching, and his eyes were filled with excitement as he said to Misha. Misha was also somewhat excited. Very quickly, the carriage arrived in front of them. The coachman indifferently glanced at the two of them. The spirit beast horse puffed out white gas from its nostrils as it fiercely flapped its wings, causing feathers to flutter about on the ground. The door of the carriage opened, and a slender and white beautiful leg came out. The beautiful leg did not have the slightest bit of fat, and it looked very slender and symmetrical. Misha and he quickly lowered their heads, not daring to look around. Soon, the figure in the carriage walked out. Her blood-red hair cascaded down like a waterfall, exposing her exquisite and beautiful face to the air. He and Misha raised their heads to take a look, and both of them were slightly dumbfounded. This woman was too beautiful. It was the kind of arrogant beauty that made people feel ashamed of their own inferiority. You said that the Shura Tower is in Heavenly Mist City. I hope you didn't lie to me." The woman's long eyelashes blinked, and her blue eyes fell on He's body, causing him to feel a huge pressure. "Saintess, how could He dare to lie to you? If it wasn't for the fact that the person with the Shura Tower was too difficult to deal with, I would have already taken back the Shura Tower and brought it back to our ancient Shura city." He bowed respectfully and said, "He didn't dare to be disrespectful." The beautiful woman in front of him was the ancient Shura city's saintess. Her strength was unfathomable, and she had a lot of authority in the ancient Shura city. Not to mention him, even some elders had to be respectful when they saw this woman, because this woman could be said to be the Shura sovereign's spokesperson. She could even be said to be the next successor of the Shura sovereign. That was the successor of a first-rate faction. So who would dare to be disrespectful? "Then, lead the way. We will go and find the Shura Tower now." The woman's bright red lips opened slightly, and a trace of redness appeared between her brows, which emitted a bewitching luster. "Now, Saintess, I think it's better if I tell you about that guy. That guy isn't easy to deal with." Cold sweat instantly dripped down He's back as he hurriedly said. The Shura Saintess coldly swept a glance at He. Her gaze caused He's entire body to tremble. Then she calmly said, "Fine, then I will first understand this fellow who dares to control my ancient Shura city's Shura Tower." He instantly heaved a sigh of relief. Looking at the slender figure of the woman walking slowly, he wiped the sweat off his forehead. "Saintess, that person who controls the Shura Tower, he is the owner of a restaurant." Holding the dragon bone kitchen knife carefully, Bufong carefully placed the breast meat that he had cut off from the heavenly flame chicken on the chopping board. The meat quality of the heavenly flame chicken was indeed very good. The meat was pink and tender, and it was covered with vein patterns. The vein patterns seemed to come to life, and they gave off a wave of spiritual energy. Bufong twirled the dragon bone kitchen knife, and with a flash of blade light, the chicken breast meat was cut into small pieces in a few breaths' time. Every small piece was very similar in size. After cutting the chicken breast, he placed it into a small bowl, sprinkled some seasoning, and marinated it for a while. After that, Bufong began to prepare the other ingredients. He took out a sack from the system's dimensional storage and poured out the contents of the sack. It was actually a sack full of peanuts. The fragrance of peanuts wafted out, causing Bufong to slightly raise his eyebrows. After grabbing a handful of peanuts, he felt as though his hands were filled with oil. These peanuts were all shelled, which saved Bufong a lot of trouble. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of 10,000 bestial flames. The flames entered the black turtle constellation Wok and quietly burned, causing the black turtle constellation Wok to heat up. Bufong poured the peanuts into the wok, added a little oil, and stir-fried them. These peanuts were not ordinary peanuts. After all, they were produced by the system. Along with a majestic spiritual energy, the fragrance of the peanuts billowed out, causing Bufong's nose to twitch involuntarily. He was a little intoxicated. When the peanuts were stir-fried until they were golden yellow, Bu Fong scooped them all up, preparing to use them. Picking up a stalk of spirit herb, the smell of the spirit herb was a little pungent, similar to that of garlic. Bu Fong chopped all of it, diced it into small pieces, and cut the other spirit fruits into small pieces as well. He scooped all of them up for later use. Finally, Bu Fong took out the dark red Sichuan pepper prepared by the system. He minced the Sichuan pepper, poured oil into the wok, and started stir-frying it. When a wave of fragrance wafted out, he poured the spirit fruits into the wok. A sizzling sound rang out, and a wave of thick smoke surged out. The spiritual energy was boiling, slightly trembling. Bu Fong flipped the wok and started stir-frying the spirit fruits and spirit herbs. A wave of pungent spiritual medicine fragrance rushed out, drilling into the nose, causing one's nostrils to feel a little itchy. After stir-frying for a while, when the spirit fruits and spirit herbs were stir-fried until they were golden yellow, and the spiritual energy calmed down, Bu Fong poured the marinated chicken breast into the wok. Once the chicken breast entered the wok, the chicken breast began to tremble due to the hot air. The spiritual energy within the heavenly flame chicken's body seemed to have been ignited, and a monstrous fire surged out, almost scaring everyone. However, Bu Fong was very calm, and after stir-frying the chicken breast with the wok for a while, the fire finally subsided. When the fire dissipated, the fragrance slowly emerged. This was the fragrance of meat, and it carried a special meaning. It seemed to be a little hot, as if it was burning. Feeling the fluctuation of spiritual energy within the wok, Bu Fong poured the red chili and the golden peanuts into the wok. Once the two of them entered the wok, a spicy fragrance surged out. The fragrance of the peanuts, the spiciness of the chili, rose and fell. Green smoke billowed out of the wok, bringing along the fragrance, floating up and down. Boom, 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 boom. Another wave of flames surged out from the wok, and the dish jumped around in the wok, as if it was a spirit. The oil shone, and the fragrance floated. Sizzle. The sound of stir-frying rang out unceasingly. The peanuts were wrapped in the fragrance of the meat, and the chicken pieces were wrapped in the fragrance of the peanuts. The two intertwined, causing the fragrance to be much richer. With the addition of the chili, the fragrance became even more intense. Sizzle. With a sizzle, the flames dissipated. Bu Fong shook the wok and poured out the steaming hot dish, which he had prepared beforehand, onto the blue and white porcelain plate. A serving of Kung Pao chicken, which looked, smelled, and looked good, was finished. After carefully wiping the oil around the blue and white porcelain plate, Bu Fong nodded his head in satisfaction. Fragrant, it was naturally very fragrant. There was a hint of spiciness in the fragrance, and just looking at it would stimulate one's appetite. Carrying the Kung Pao chicken, Bu Fong walked out of the kitchen. This caused the eyes of Lord Go and Yu, who were already somewhat impatient, to light up. They stared at the figure walking out of the kitchen. However, they were quickly stunned because they saw that Bu Fong was only carrying a single dish in his hand. How could there only be one dish? Sweet and sour ribs, dragon blood rice. Shouldn't there be two dishes? Could it be that Bu Fong, this kid, was biased toward someone today? Bu Fong's face was calm as he carried the Kung Pao chicken to the table where Lord Go and you were sitting. Today, we will try a new dish. Placing the Kung Pao chicken on the table, Bu Fong said calmly. He glanced at Lord Go, who had a disappointed look on his face, and at you, who was a little confused. The corners of his mouth curled up. Bu Fong, this brat. Lord Go, if you taste this new dish, will there still be sweet and sour ribs left to eat? Blacka stuck out its tongue and asked earnestly. Take a guess. Bu Fong expressionlessly looked at Lord Go and replied. Bu Fong's expression was asking for a beating, and Lord Go almost couldn't help but slap him to death. You, on the other hand, didn't care. This woman stretched out her slender fingers toward the Kung Pao chicken. However, just as her fingers were about to touch the dish, Bu Fong knocked his hand with his chopsticks. You have to learn how to use chopsticks. Bu Fong glanced at you and said. Yu's pitch-black eyes swept over Bu Fong. Her face was expressionless, and it seemed like she was insisting on it. However, Bufong just used his chopsticks and ignored her. He used his chopsticks to pick up a piece of steaming hot chicken breast and stuffed it into his mouth. After a piece of chicken entered his mouth, Bufong raised his eyebrows and slightly squinted his eyes. He began to enjoy the wonderful taste of the meat in his mouth. He stuck out her tongue and licked her delicate lips. It seemed like she was attracted by Bufong's table manners. She secretly stretched out her hand to grab the Kung Pao chicken. However, Bufong slapped it away. You felt a little wronged. She coldly glanced at Bufong and obediently picked up her chopsticks. Lord Go looked at the two of them, and his face was filled with despair. He waved his exquisite dog paw, and his face was filled with confusion. Did he want Lord Go to use chopsticks as well? Chapter 531. Old Boo, why didn't you tell me when you had a new dish? Hurry up and give me one. Nangong Wuk's nose twitched as soon as he entered the store. He smelled the new dish and started yelling at Bufong. They were all here for the reward. After serving the sweet in, sour ribs and dragon blood rice to Blackie and Yu, Bufong started preparing his own breakfast. He took out the golden shumai from the steamer basket. Rolling his eyes, he went back to the kitchen. So what? Nangong Wuk was startled. Could it be that young Meiji came over to remind him that Bufong was very strong? Owner Boo, are you still open for business today? Today is the top 10 competition of the Magical Hand Conference. It's the competition of this year's popular champion, Mubai. Aren't you going to watch? Old Boo, the competition is in 3 days. Are you really going to give up? What about the top 3? How many crystals will the top 3 be awarded? Bufong asked, pleasantly surprised. Nangong Wuk had come to the store with his beautiful little sister, Nangong Wan, and he had eagerly come over. His extravagant appearance made Bufong's eyes light up. Oh, Owner Boo, you have a new dish. What's there to see? It's meaningless even if you go and watch. With Mubai's strength, he will definitely crush everyone. Let me tell you, the champion of this year's Magical Hand Conference is none other than Mubai. That monster, no one can compare to him in alchemy. Nangong Wan rolled her eyes in disdain. Nangong Wuk, you're already shameless to the point of being invincible. Nangong Wuk was very carefree. He hummed a tune as he strolled around the courtyard of the Nangong family. However, Lord Go felt stifled. He didn't have a good impression of the Kung Pao chicken. Even though it tasted good, Lord Go felt weak when he ate it. Looking at the burly woman's bashful attitude, Nangong Wuk really wanted to roll his eyes like Nangong Wan. After the meal, Bufong cleaned up the bowls and chopsticks, opened the bronze door, and officially started the business. A plate of Kung Pao chicken was basically eaten by her. She didn't even let the peanuts go. There are essence crystals as a reward. Upon hearing the word essence crystals, Bufong became spirited. This was a bowl of Kung Pao chicken that Lord Go got by selling his dignity. Could it be that Bufong wanted a dog to learn how to use chopsticks? This was too much. Lord Go's dog ears perked up as he looked at this woman warily. What was this woman trying to do? In a Magical Hand Conference where the Holy Son of Alchemy wasn't participating, he was definitely the person with the highest chance of becoming the champion. In other words, becoming the champion was already his goal. The top 10 rankers of the Magical Hand Conference would all be rewarded. Each of them would be rewarded with an elixir recipe of a different grade. Moreover, they would also be provided with a large amount of crystals. The number of diners was unexpectedly few. They were all old customers, and they greeted Bufong with a smile before entering the restaurant to order their dishes. Ah, this is the benefit of using chopsticks, Bufong said as he looked at the stupefied Lord Go. After you learned how to use chopsticks, she picked up a piece of Kung Pao chicken and put it into her mouth. Her eyes widened, and the speed at which she swung her chopsticks increased. Tomorrow was the day of the competition between Nangong Wuk and Bufong. The night was beautiful, and it was intoxicating. However, the heaven and earth obsidian flame that he used to control was now being controlled by Yang Meiji, and he felt a little uncomfortable. Bufong returned to his room and took a shower. After washing his face and rinsing his mouth, he stood by the window with his hair still damp. He enjoyed the cool breeze as he looked at the night sky of heavenly Mist City. The next day, the sky was bright, and the sunlight shone down on Bu Fong's face. It made Bu Fong feel a little itchy. Compared to those alchemists, selling the Buddha jumps over the wall soup was more important. However, when Lord Go saw Bu Fong's disdainful expression, he couldn't help but explode in anger. He didn't have a good impression of this woman, but he didn't hate her either. After all, she had obtained his 9 Hell King Flame because of her ability and luck. It's boring. I've already achieved my goal of participating in the competition. So compared to the next competition, I'm more willing to do business in my store. Bu Fong calmly replied. Nangong Wuk was dumbfounded when he saw Yang Meiji. After finishing the Kung Pao chicken in her bowl, you licked her red lips. Her eyes glanced around, and her gaze landed on Lord Go's bowl, which still had many pieces of chicken. Yang Meiji had unexpectedly found Nangong Wuk. This guy actually didn't go to watch Mu Bai's competition today. Yang Meiji's bashful figure instantly froze, and her face reddened as she said, I know that you're going to fight against Bu Fong tomorrow. Bu Fong isn't easy to deal with. His culinary skills are really amazing, so the customers were most interested in Owner Bu's new dish, and many of them ordered the Kung Pao chicken. It was indeed unnecessary. Bu Fong had already planned to give Nangong Wuk a stroke of luck in the next round, and he was prepared to lose to him. Thus, he basically wouldn't have the chance to encounter those alchemists. There was no need for him to watch the competition. If he had the time, he might as well open his store and sell more Buddha jumps over the wall soup. The setting sun was as red as fire, and it illuminated the horizon into a surging sea of fire. Bu Fong was somewhat speechless. He had only eaten a few pieces of chicken, but the taste was really good. It gave him a refreshing feeling. So, I plan to return the Heaven and Earth Obsidian Flame to you. With the Heaven and Earth Obsidian Flame, you will be even more confident in defeating Bu Fong. Yang Meiji clenched her big fists and looked at Nangong Wuk sincerely. However, Lord Go didn't manage to protect the chicken in his porcelain bowl, and he looked at you with a gloomy expression on his face as he gently picked up the chicken with her chopsticks and took it away. Did he really think that the alchemists participated in the Magical Hand Conference just for the honor? Bullsh asterisk T honor. Could it be used to make a living? Compared to the sweet and sour ribs, this moment of gloominess was nothing. He got up from his bed and went to the kitchen. He started to practice his cooking and knife skills, and he also cooked a bowl of sweet and sour ribs and dragon blood rice. The moonlight gradually turned cold, and the pitch-black night sky gradually turned dark blue. These people had been eating at Bu Fong's Cloud Mist restaurant for a long time. There were people who only knew how to eat fasting pills, but ever since they ate Bu Fong's dishes, they came here every day, and it had already become a habit for them. I support you, Nangong once said. Oh, there are crystals as a reward, but it's not a lot. The 10th place will only get 10,000 crystals, and the 3rd place will only get 100,000 crystals, Nangong once said. In the end, Lord Go still got to eat the Kung Pao chicken. Nangong Wan really felt that he was shameless to the extreme. Was he really her biological brother? Or could it be said that the rewards set up by the Pill Palace were meaningless? For an alchemist, 10,000 crystals and 100,000 crystals were nothing. You don't want to watch Mu Bai's competition? Bu Fong walked out with a bowl of Kung Pao chicken and placed it in front of him. Lord Go, who was extremely gloomy, looked at Bu Fong and wanted to slap him with his paw. However, he still endured it. If he slapped this guy to death, who would make sweet and sour ribs for him in the future? Owner Bu, you really don't want to continue participating in the competition? Actually, you could try to get into the top 3. The top 3 of the Magical Hand Conference is the dream of many people. If you can get into the top 3 of the Magical Hand Conference, you'll have the opportunity to enter the Heaven Secret Territory, which is controlled by the Pill Palace. You will also have the opportunity to get a 5-mark spirit pill recipe. Nangong Wan said to Bu Fong. For the rich and overbearing Nangong family, there was no difference between 100,000 crystals and 10,000 crystals. Suddenly, he became nervous. Old Bu, don't tell me that you are going to start fighting again because of the reward. Don't. I said that I would give up, so I have to give up. A man must keep his word. Bufong was slightly stunned, but he quickly regained his senses. He shook his head and said, "There's no need for that." The competition for the top 10 would have one match a day. The 10 matches would last for 10 days. The 5 people who advanced to the next round would continue to compete, and one of them would get a bye. The top 3 would then compete in the final round, and their rankings would be determined through the ranking of their dishes. Nangong Wuk narrowed his eyes and shamelessly said to Bufong, "Then don't forfeit the next round. Just put on a show. Go to the arena and cook a dish or something. That way, I'll have some face if I win, right?" Nangong Wuk narrowed his eyes and shamelessly said. This time, it was Nangong Wan and Nangong Wuk's turn to be stunned. Why would Bufong ask such a question that lacked common sense? What business does Miss Yang Meiji have with me? If there's nothing else, please leave first. I still need to prepare my dish for tomorrow's competition, Nangong Wuk said without any change in expression. Bufong took a deep breath, turned around, and laid on his bed. He started to sleep. As a chef, sleep was a necessity. Suddenly, a tall and sturdy figure walked into the Nangong family. Nangong Wuk used his chopsticks to pick up a piece of chicken and stuffed it into his mouth. His eyes widened and his legs trembled. This woman shouldn't even think about touching a piece of Kung Pao chicken. The top 3 of the Magical Hand Conference will be rewarded, right? Pill King Mu was a monstrous alchemist in Heavenly Pill City. He was an outstanding alchemist in the younger generation of the Pill Palace. He was on par with the Holy Son and Holy Daughter of the Pill Palace. He was even hailed as the next Holy Son of the Pill Palace. What are you afraid of? I'm not interested in the secret realm. Bufong looked at Nangong Wuk's nervous expression and curled up the corners of his mouth. Nangong Wuk finished his Kung Pao chicken, licked his oily lips, and asked Bufong in a serious tone. Nethery burped as she ate, and her burps were filled with spiritual energy, which made her look a little funny. Didn't Old Boo say that he doesn't want to compete? I'm giving Old Boo a way out of this embarrassing situation. This is called being reasonable. Since Old Boo is going to give up, he might as well lose with dignity. This way, he can still get in the top 10, Nangong Wuk said. Top 3. Old Boo, the top 3 will be rewarded with crystals? Aren't you a little old-fashioned? The top 3 will get a spot in the secret realm, which is not something that can be bought with crystals. Nangong Wuk's legs trembled as he looked at Bufong as if he was looking at a country bumpkin. Nangong Wan's words slightly stunned Bufong. Do you know that Xiao Bai has another nickname? Nangong Wuk was a chatterbox, and he couldn't stop talking. A sharp-eyed old customer suddenly noticed the addition of Kung Pao chicken on the menu. His eyes lit up, and he said to Bufong with a smile. This reward was meaningless to them. He knew that Bufong was strong, but Bufong was going to lose to him the next day. Thinking about this, he felt a little excited. Bear with it, and the sweet and sour ribs flew everywhere. After getting Bufong's guarantee, Nangong Wuk felt more confident. He waved his hand and ordered a few more dishes, including Buddha jumps over the wall soup. After dipping in vinegar, he stuffed it into his mouth. For the past 3 days, Nangong Wuk had been eating in Bufong's Cloud Mist restaurant, and he seemed to have put on a lot of weight. After getting Bufong's guarantee, he felt more confident. When the time came, he would just have to go through the motions on the stage. Nangong Wuk nervously said a lot. A customer said to Bufong with a smile, "That arrogant Mu Bai, everyone calls him Elixir King. Isn't he arrogant? Even those great alchemists don't dare to call themselves Elixir Kings." As for Bufong, he turned around and went into the kitchen to get busy. When Bufong saw Lord Go's stupefied expression, he took out another small bowl and poured it into it. Chapter 532. Suddenly, a servant standing respectfully at the entrance bowed to Nangong Wuk with a strange expression on his face. "Family head, you finally come out of seclusion. The Magical Hand Conference is about to end." Originally, he thought that the one who would give up today would be Bufong. In the end, Bufong didn't give up. He calmly came to participate in the competition, but in the end, it was Nangong Wuk who ran into a problem. However, this miraculous chef cut through the crowd like a sharp knife and forced his way into the top 10. Bufong clasped his hands behind his back and slowly walked up the stage. Nangong Wuk still hadn't arrived. Xiong Shi, who was in the audience, couldn't help but cry once again. What kind of grudge was this? It was a competition that Bufong was sure to win, but he still brought out his big bear to cause trouble. Couldn't he treat him well? However, if he wanted to follow, Bufong couldn't do anything about it. He wouldn't say anything and just let her follow. It was another beautiful day. This time, everyone was a little puzzled. Within the secret chamber, Nangong Wuk opened his eyes. A surging aura surged violently behind his back. Two of the Supreme Being's shackles were faintly discernible on his back, and the phantom image of the third shackle gradually appeared. She knew that Bufong was going to cook again. The audience was a little confused, and they started whispering to each other. They were all puzzled and didn't understand what was going on. They were standing here today because Nangong Wuk said that he wanted to lose beautifully. If Bufong knew what Grandmaster Xianming was thinking, he would definitely feel wronged. That was because he really wanted to give up on the competition. After Bufong packed his things, he clasped his hands behind his back and prepared to leave the restaurant. She knew what Bufong was going to do. After all, she had eaten Bufong's dishes on the stage. Knife skills were the foundation of a chef. This was also why Bufong would take time out every day to practice his knife skills. A good knife skill was extremely important to a chef. After standing on the stage and sizing it up for a long time, the audience's enthusiasm gradually died down. However, even after a long time, they still couldn't find any trace of Nangong Wuk. While thinking about it, Bufong took out a big bear from the system dimensional bag and patted it. Bufong chopped off the bear's paw and began to cook. An irrepressible joy appeared on Nangong Wuk's face. He raised his hand, and a white flame danced on his fingertip. That familiar feeling instantly covered his whole body. Bufong walked downstairs and went to the kitchen. He habitually practiced his cutting and carving skills. Bufong had been practicing the Overlord 13 blades all this time. However, he still hadn't mastered the so-called Overlord energy. Bufong was also dumbfounded. Could it be that Nangong Wuk overslept? That shouldn't be the case. How could he oversleep for such an important matter? Where is Nangong Wuk? Why isn't he here yet? That kid, does he still want to stay in the Heavenly Mist City's Pill Tower? At the very least, it was a sin to make so many people feel regret. The chief judge felt a headache coming on. He realized that whenever a chef, Bufong, was involved in a competition, something would happen. His opponent would always be extremely unlucky. He was in a daze for a while. After thinking about it, she decided to follow him. Not only were the Heavenly Mist City's audience stunned, but the audience on the other side of the projection array was also stunned. According to Nangong Wuk's character, he should have arrived long ago. Nangong Wuk actually chose to forfeit the competition. However, after the announcement, the atmosphere became a little awkward. The time for the competition had arrived. The 5 Grandmasters' warships slowly floated in the sky. 5 sage-like figures stepped out from the warships. Their hair fluttered in the wind. Grandmaster Xianming's aura fluctuated as he announced the start of the competition of the top 10. Nangong Wuk still hadn't arrived. This caused Bufong to feel a little suspicious. Did that bastard really forfeit the competition? Go to the audience and wait for me. Bufong turned around and whispered to you. This time, there was only one arena in the central plaza. The arena was surrounded by seats, and there were no absences. Almost every seat was occupied. However, it couldn't drag on for too long. With her understanding of Nangong Wuk, it was impossible for him to choose to forfeit the competition. Furthermore, he had already made an agreement with Owner Boo. Owner Boo would throw the competition today. The two of them slowly walked forward. After a long time, they arrived at the central plaza of Heavenly Mist City. This is simply preposterous. This little bastard, Grandmaster Xianming, was so angry that his beard fluttered. He was on the verge of going berserk. After Blackie and you finished their breakfast, the lazy dog chose to lie down under the path understanding tree and sleep soundly. Grandmaster Xianming couldn't help but feel a little speechless. Nangong Wuk said that he wouldn't forfeit the competition, but in the end, he still stood on the arena energetically. This time, Bufang didn't carry his signboard to the competition. Since the temporary task had already ended, Bufang didn't need to carry his signboard with great fanfare every time he participated in the competition. His eyes seemed to flicker with a bright light. He opened his mouth, and a pitch-black, turbid energy appeared. When Bufang brought you into the central plaza, the sound of the crowd suddenly resounded, causing Bufang to become slightly absent-minded, as expected of an alchemist. If he used this bronze platform, he could at least improve his condition by a lot. This was the first time Bufang seriously sized up the bronze platform. He extended his hand and stroked the vein patterns on the bronze platform. The vein patterns didn't give off a rough feeling. Instead, they gave off a comfortable feeling. It was as if a gentle breeze had brushed past him. In the end, he didn't come. The roars gathered together and soared into the sky, becoming somewhat deafening. After regaining what he had lost, he felt that his control over the heaven and earth obsidian flame, the Nine-Hell King flame, had become even more proficient. The incomparably excited audience, sitting in the audience seats, made Bufang feel a little puzzled. Her long, pitch-black hair cascaded down, spreading over her fair legs. When the sunlight shone on Yu's rosy face, it gave her a kind of hazy beauty. This was the first time Bufang realized that he actually had so many supporters. What exactly is going on? Grandmaster Xianming looked at the chief judge in charge of this competition with a solemn expression. Little chef, you are the biggest dark horse in this competition. Please be a dark horse to the end. They had agreed to let owner Bu throw the match, but now they had directly dug a well for Bufang. The audience was shocked. Nethery, who was wearing a black dress, followed behind him. Her slender and beautiful legs were white and tender. This woman did not like to wear shoes. Her body was slightly floating, and when her sparkling feet touched the ground, her figure would be pushed forward. Didn't they say that the little chef was going to forfeit? How did it become Nangong Wuk forfeiting? Everyone was in high spirits when they encountered such a joyous occasion. Nangong Wuk might really forfeit. The time limit for the competition is up. We can't delay any longer, the chief judge said. His appearance was a miracle. With the identity of a chef, he killed his way through and defeated countless genius alchemists. Regardless of whether it was Sorceress in Shang or Crazy Xiong Shi, they were both famous genius alchemists. Basically, no one thought that Bufang would win. The audience knew that Bufang was going to forfeit this round, and they all came to watch Bufang's match with hope. They didn't think that Bufang would really not forfeit and would really appear. This caused many people to reveal expressions of excitement. They were so excited that they couldn't help but roar. Bufang's mouth twitched. With a wave of his hand, a heavy black turtle constellation walk landed on the stage with a loud bang. Was he messing with him? Nangong family. However, there were some people who thought highly of this dark horse. He was currently the biggest dark horse in the Magical Hand Conference. He was a dark horse that caused many people's eyes to pop out of their sockets. If it wasn't a furnace exploding, it was a crying fit. In the end, there was even someone who forfeited the competition, Creek. In order to satisfy the eager hearts of the audience, Grandmaster Xianming's face darkened. He still wanted to help Nangong Wuk delay a little more. If it was any other time, Nangong Wuk, this clown, would have appeared long ago and told him to go through the motions. Bufang lazily opened his eyes. After a yawn, he got out of bed with a blurry look in his eyes. He walked to the windowsill and breathed in the fresh air that filled his lungs. His entire being felt a little more refreshed. This time, I really won't be cooking any new dishes. I'm just going to buy some soy sauce, Bufang earnestly said to you. A portion of sweet and sour ribs and a portion of dragon blood rice. Bufang quickly finished cooking these two dishes. He carried the fragrant dishes out of the kitchen. It was the next day. Following by Bufang's side, Nangong Wuk felt as though he had become the center of attention. When he opened the secret room's door, the dazzling sunlight shone down. Nangong Wuk took a deep breath. His entire being was in a good state of mind. When did Nangong Wuk become so unmanly? You nodded her head and expressionlessly turned around. She tapped the ground with her sparkling feet, and her entire body floated up. Although Bu Fong clearly said that he might give up on the competition, there were still many people who came to watch the competition. Forget it. Go and announce the star of the competition. Let Bu Fong finish this competition properly. Although he doesn't have an opponent, he still has to finish his dish properly. This is a responsibility for him and everyone else, Grandmaster Xian Ming said. Some people liked him, while some people hated him. This was normal. However, what surprised everyone was Bu Fong's identity. He was a chef. Giving up on the competition isn't something a man should do. Don't give up. Since Nangong Wuk wasn't here, he was destined to win this competition. So, he decided to cook a dish properly. Nangong Wan, who was in the audience, couldn't sit still. She remembered that the audience was shouting the slogan, "Kill the public enemy of alchemists." Bu Fong looked around. When he saw so many people supporting him, he was slightly absent-minded. Could it be that his decision was wrong? In front of so many people supporting him, he should have chosen to fight for the championship. Fine. In the end, he won without knowing why. The bronze platform for the competition of the top 10 was much better than the bronze platform from before. Using this bronze platform to concoct pills would allow one to concentrate their mental energy to a high degree. You curiously looked around. She wasn't used to this kind of bustling scene, especially when it was a scene where everyone was paying attention to it. As of now, Bu Fong's reputation was no longer insignificant. He was no longer the unknown little chef who came to Heavenly Mist City for the first time. He was no longer the little chef who needed to use the stinky tofu to attract people's attention. Bu Fong, do your best. Don't give up. Was this dark horse planning to stay in the dark until the end? In fact, she had already become the center of attention. As a beauty, she became the center of attention the moment she appeared. Interesting. They were completely intimidated by this chef. The arena for the top 10 tournament was a specially made arena, and the materials used were different. The bronze platform was engraved with mysterious spirit arrays, and the faint fluctuations emitted by the spirit arrays made people feel comfortable. He was actually a low-profile person. Some people hoped that a genius alchemist would stand up and defeat this chef. They hoped that the alchemists would be able to take revenge. When the audience saw Bu Fong, who was slowly walking into the tunnel, they all let out excited roars. The competition is about to start. Why isn't he here yet? Is he going to give up? That night, Yang Meiji didn't leave the Nangong family. At this moment, no one knew what had happened to Nangong Wuk. As for you, she pulled a chair and sat under the path understanding tree in a daze. Chapter 533. When Nangong Wuk first heard the servant's news, he rejected it, because he felt that the servant was joking. But when he saw the blazing sun that was floating in mid-air and radiating with all its might, his entire person was shocked. T. He seemed to have missed the match. Why was it already so late? This was somewhat out of his expectations. According to his original plan, he would have spent a night fusing with a 9 Hell King flame. Then, he would rush to the central plaza and finish the match. However, man proposes, God disposes. He had spent so much time fusing with a 9 Hell King flame. Nangong Wuk's heart was bleeding. Old Bu was going to throw the match for him. What did he do? He had betrayed Old Bu's painstaking efforts. He didn't go to the match. Why didn't you remind me? Nangong Wuk's heart twitched. He gloomily said to the servant standing respectfully at the side. The servant was taken aback. He bowed slightly and said, "If you want to remind me, Patriarch, you should have told me earlier. How would I have known to remind you? That's why the next time the clan head has something to say, you have to say it earlier. If you don't say it earlier, there will be no trust between us. Don't say any more. It's all my fault." Nangong Wuk was furious. However, he couldn't refute the servant's words. He didn't care about breathing fresh air anymore. He was too lazy to enjoy the feeling of the 9 Hell King flame flowing through his body. He just wanted to rush to the central plaza as soon as possible. Perhaps he could make it in time for the match. After leaving the secret room, Nangong Wook didn't even bother to clean up the dirt on his body. He quickly left the Nangong family's courtyard and rushed toward the central plaza. His speed was extremely fast. He felt that he had been tricked by Yang Meiji. Was that woman purposely here to cause trouble? Was it to prevent him from participating in today's match? What kind of relationship did Yang Meiji and Old Bu have? He didn't expect Old Bu to be like this. Nangong Wook felt as though he had seen through Old Bu's true colors. He had lost this match without knowing why. No, he had lost this match clearly. He didn't lose to Bu Fong. He lost to Yang Meiji. Who would have thought that Yang Meiji would return the 9 Hell King Flame to him on the last day? That sincere look on her face made it difficult for him to refuse. The result of being too embarrassed to refuse was that he missed the time to participate in the competition. When he rushed to the entrance of the central plaza, he smelled a fragrance drifting over. His heart sank to the bottom of the valley. This fragrance, without a doubt, Old Bu had started cooking. The winner of this round was Old Bu. Since he did not participate in the competition, as long as Old Bu's dish met the requirements, he would win. He lost so unjustly. After Bu Fong finished cooking the bear paw, the fragrant bear paw attracted the attention of countless people. Although this was not the first time they had cooked the bear paw, every time they saw the dish, they would let out countless exclamations of surprise. They had not tasted the bear paw before, but from the way the alchemy grandmasters ate it, they could guess how delicious it was. Bu Fong wiped off the water stains on his hands and exhaled softly. His gaze shifted to the distance, where the bronze platform stood alone. Nangong Wook was still nowhere to be seen. This guy, where'd he go? Bu Fong muttered suspiciously. All of a sudden, the audience let out a cry of surprise. Many people even laughed and whistled. The alchemy grandmasters, who were seriously preparing the bear paw, were also attracted by this scene. They did not understand why the audience would have such an intense reaction, so they all looked over. At the entrance of the central plaza, a figure with a sorry expression walked in. That person looked as though he was about to cry. That person was none other than Nangong Wook. This kid still dares to appear? Grandmaster Xianming glared at Nangong Wook. With a piece of bear paw meat stuffed in his mouth, he coldly stared at Nangong Wook. Looking at that kid's appearance, it seems like he did not make it to the competition due to some matters. Grandmaster Gu, he said with a smile. Bu Fong crossed his arms in front of his chest and looked at Nangong Wook with a playful expression. When Nangong Wook met Bu Fong's gaze, he suddenly straightened his back and looked at Bu Fong with a serious expression. Old Bu, I have done what you asked of me. I have also given you the opportunity that you wanted. You can't let me down. You must enter the top 3. Let those alchemists who mock you see what a true chef is. Bu Fong was stunned. Everyone was stunned. In the next instant, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Was there something fishy? The reason why Nangong Wook gave up on the competition was still unclear. Owner Bu's goal was to enter the top 3. Wasn't he planning to give up on the competition? If he entered the top 3, wouldn't he have to fight with young Master Mu Bai? Although they all supported Bu Fong, if Bu Fong were to fight with young Master Mu Bai, it would not be a battle of the same level, right? Even Mao Shi was not someone that Owner Bu could compare to. When Nangong Wook said those words, many people sneered. One of them was Mao Shi. Mao Shi sat on the spectators' platform and looked at Bu Fong with disdain. He was very clear about Nangong Wook's character. That kid did not seem like someone who would easily give up on the competition. It was obvious that something had happened. It was obvious that the chef had won because of some dogshit luck. This kind of person also wanted to enter the top 3. Did he really think that there was no one else in the Magical Hand Conference? Even if you were daydreaming, you shouldn't do it like this. Mu Bai, on the other hand, was very gentle. This man had always been gentle. There was a smile on the corner of his mouth, like flowing milk, refreshing the heart. A chef. Interesting. The winner of this round is Bu Fong. Grandmaster Xianming glared at Nangong Wook. As Nangong Wook's teacher, Grandmaster Xianming could tell that Nangong Wook was lying with his eyes wide open. It was definitely because of Nangong Wook himself. It was not because of his promise to Bu Fong. Nangong Wuk just wanted to find a way out of this embarrassing situation. However, Nangong Wuk was too immoral. His words were equivalent to pushing Bu Fong to the other top 10 alchemists. He wanted to make Bu Fong suffer the anger of so many alchemists. Moreover, these alchemists were not ordinary alchemists. Not to mention Mu Bai, Mao Shi, and the others were all ruthless characters. Mao Shi's alchemy skills were very high. He was much better than Crazy Xiong and Sorceress and Shang. However, Bu Fong did not care. After obtaining victory, he clasped his hands behind his back and prepared to leave the stage. He wanted to return early and open his shop for business. Compared to the competition, he felt that business was more important. Bu Fong had advanced to the next round. It was hard to say who his next opponent would be. However, the audience guessed that there was a high chance that Bu Fong would meet Mao Shi in the next round. That was because Mao Shi was the one competing the next day. If both of them advanced to the next round, it would be easy for them to be assigned to the top 3. Of course, it could also be Mu Bai. However, if Bu Fong really met Mu Bai so early, it could only be said that his luck was terrible. Once he met Mu Bai, Bu Fong would have no hope of winning. In the hearts of the audience, Elixir King Mu Bai had too much power. After the competition ended, Bu Fong walked down the stage and walked to Nangong Wuk's side. He clasped his hands behind his back and looked at him indifferently. "Didn't you say that you wanted me to throw the match? Why didn't you even give me the chance to throw the match?" Nangong Wuk felt a little stifled. He really didn't do it on purpose. It was all because of that woman, Yang Meiji. She came looking for him for no reason and asked him to return the heaven and earth obsidian flame. How could he have known that fusing with a heaven and earth obsidian flame would take so much time? Bu Fong raised his hand and stopped Nangong Wuk from speaking. He glanced at Nangong Wuk and calmly said, "All right, there's no need to say anything. I've already decided to forfeit the next match, just like you." Nangong Wuk's face turned red. TSK, you want to forfeit again? Didn't you say that your goal was to get into the top 3? How did it become forfeit again? A mocking voice drifted over from afar. Mao Shi, who had a look of disdain on his face, appeared beside the two of them. He sneered as he looked at the two of them. "What does it have to do with you? How could you believe old Bu's casual words? Did your IQ get eaten by a dog?" Nangong Wuk looked at Mao Shi as though he was looking at an idiot. Mao Shi froze, and the corners of his mouth curled up in disdain. "I don't talk to cowards who forfeit. I can tell you directly, chef, that your next opponent will be me." Mao Shi's gaze landed on Bu Fong's body, and it was incomparably cold. Nangong Wuk was infuriated. Coward? Who was a coward? He had accidentally cultivated too much. What did that have to do with being a coward? If you say one more word, be careful that I, Nangong Wuk, don't get angry with you. Nangong Wuk's nostrils flared, and he breathed out hot air. His eyes were wide open, and they were bloodshot. Mao Shi shook his head in disdain. He was too lazy to bother with Nangong Wuk. He looked at Bu Fong, waiting for Bu Fong's reaction. "Oh, all right, then I will give you some good fortune." Bu Fong was stunned for a moment before he said seriously. Mao Shi was stunned. "Who needs your good fortune? I can easily defeat you, so why would I need you to give it to me? Don't make it sound so dignified. Just wait for your defeat. I will return the humiliation you brought upon in Shang to you. I will let you know what it means to be defeated. A chef should obediently stay in the kitchen and cook. Don't come out and embarrass yourself. Are you trying to help Big Boobs and get back at her? Who are you to Big Boobs in? Do you have the qualifications to help Big Boobs in?" Nangong Wuk really couldn't stand Mao Shi's arrogant face, and he continuously asked, "Shut up. Don't use such vulgar words to address in Shang." Mao Shi was instantly infuriated, and his gaze was like a poisonous snake as he stared at Nangong Wuk. "Oh ho, you want me to shut up?" Nangong Wuk was feeling very stifled, and after being provoked by Mao Shi, his entire body was also infuriated. He was in a bad mood, and he emitted an oppressive aura. I already said that a chef is a chef. A chef who can't even enter the Hall of Elegance should obediently stay in the kitchen and cook your dishes. In the next round, I will let you know what it means to be in despair. An alchemist is not someone a chef can compare to," Mao Shi said coldly. Nangong Wuk secretly snorted, and he was about to make a move. However, he was stopped by Bu Fong's shoulder. From afar, Yu slowly floated over, and she stood behind Bu Fong. Yu's gaze was deep and cold, and she glanced at Mao Shi before retracting it. Her gaze was as though she was looking at an insignificant ant, and she didn't seem to care about him at all. A chef can't enter the Hall of Elegance? Who gave you the confidence to say such a thing? Bu Fong's face slightly darkened. He expressionlessly looked at Mao Shi and calmly said, "My next opponent is you? Fine. If your furnace doesn't explode in the next round, consider it my loss." Chapter 534. In the next round, if your furnace doesn't explode, it will be my loss. These words floated out of Bu Fong's mouth lightly. Although they weren't sonorous or forceful, they still caused Nangong Wuk and Mao Shi to be startled. Nangong Wuk looked at Bu Fong in disbelief. His eyes widened. What did Bu Fong just say? So domineering? Was this still the Bu Fong he knew? Mao Shi was also taken aback. He was stunned by Bu Fong's words, and he stood rooted to the ground. His entire person was a little dumbfounded. You? Mao Shi raised his eyebrows and wanted to say something. He didn't think that this chef would actually dare to say such words. How could he dare to say such words to him? If your furnace doesn't explode, it will be my loss. How could he dare to say such words? What kind of person did this chef think Mao Shi was? The kind of trash alchemist who could casually cause his furnace to explode? Wasn't he looking down on Mao Shi a little too much? He was a genius alchemist who could compete with Mu Bai. This chef's words were simply infuriating. You don't have to say anything. You will know in the next round. You can leave now. Bu Fong's face was solemn. He glanced at Mao Shi and raised his hand to stop him from speaking. You can leave now? Who do you think you are? You want me to leave just because you say so? Mao Shi was instantly enraged. He was so angry that he almost vomited blood. Nangong Wuk looked at Bu Fong in shock. It was as though this was the first time he had met Bu Fong. He didn't think that Bu Fong could be so domineering. He thought that this fellow was always so indifferent. You followed behind Bu Fong. The two of them had the same expression and didn't seem to have any changes. They walked into the distance and ignored Mao Shi. Bu Fong was a little angry. It wasn't because of Mao Shi's overbearing tone. It was because Mao Shi looked down on the chef. Why did he have to look down on the chef? Did the chef let him down? As a chef, Bu Fong had the pride of chef. It was the pride of his profession. Mao Shi sucked in a deep breath. He had never been so sullen before. A lowly chef had actually caused him, an alchemist, to lose so much face. This was unforgivable. How could he let Bu Fong leave just like that? Then he wouldn't be Mao Shi. He took a step forward and the aura on his body surged. 3 Supreme Being shackles swayed behind his body and blocked in front of Bu Fong, trying to stop Bu Fong from advancing. Buzz, the sudden burst of aura caused the audience who had yet to leave the arena to be shocked. One by one, they looked towards the source of the aura. Although some of the audience members didn't have high cultivation bases, their sensitivity to auras wasn't any weaker than anyone else's. They were very alert to gossip. When their gazes landed, an uproar broke out. That was because the person who had unleashed his chi was none other than the genius alchemist, Mao Shi. The person Mao Shi was trying to stop was actually the chef who had shown in a magical hand conference. What was going on? Was Mao Shi going to make a move on the chef? The audience widened their eyes. Those who were about to leave the central plaza stopped in their tracks and looked at Bu Fong. Bu Fong frowned slightly and raised his head. He looked at Mao Shi, who was standing in front of him with his head held high. Mao Shi coldly laughed. He narrowed his eyes and looked at Bu Fong. The corners of his mouth curled up as he said, "Did I scare you? That's right. You are just a Supreme Being who hasn't even broken through one of the Supreme Being shackles. In front of experts like us, you can only tremble in fear." Nangong Wuk looked at Mao Shi as though he was looking at an idiot. Was this Mao Shi blind? Did he not see Big Sister Nethery standing behind Bu Fong? Who was Big Sister Nethery? She was someone who didn't even fear experts who had broken through 5 of the Supreme Being's shackles. Was there a hole in Mao Shi's brain. He actually dared to block Bufong's path. Blocking Bufong's path was the same as blocking Big Sister Nethery's path. Oh, that's right. Mao Shi really didn't know who Big Sister Nethery was. As he thought about this, Nangong Wuk looked at Mao Shi with a hint of pity. This retard. What do you want to do? Bufong furrowed his brows and asked unhappily. Nothing. I'm just unhappy. A chef wants to run away after acting cool in front of me. Does he really think that I, Mao Shi, am trash? Mao Shi coldly laughed. A wave of true energy surged out from his dantian and covered his arm. He used one hand to grab Bufong. He wanted to teach Bufong a lesson. The audience was in an uproar. He really made a move. It was simply too exciting. They didn't know how the Dark Horse chef would react. After all, his strength was too weak. Among the audience, only Nangong Wuk wasn't worried about Bufong. But as a strange wave suddenly spread out. Mao Shi, stop! Just as Mao Shi's palm was about to reach Bufong, he suddenly froze. Behind him, a few shouts rang out, and two figures quickly rushed over. And Sheng's face was filled with anxiety. Behind her was Mu Bai, who was like a spring breeze. Mu Bai was very satisfied. Who would dare to not give him face? As expected, Mao Shi stopped. However, when he saw Mao Shi's appearance, he was slightly stunned. That was because he realized that Mao Shi's entire body was incomparably stiff. Cold sweat flowed down from his forehead and dripped onto the ground. Huh? What was going on? And Sheng and Mu Bai both realized that something was wrong. However, they didn't know what was going on. Mao Shi felt as though his entire body had fallen into an ice cave. A hint of fear suddenly appeared in his eyes. That fear almost suffocated him. That woman, that terrifying woman, what kind of existence was she? Why was she so terrifying? That gaze, it made him feel as though he was a demon that had crawled out from hell. His heart shrank, and he didn't dare to move an inch. Bufong's expression was indifferent. He raised his hand and pressed it on top of Mao Shi's palm. He slowly pressed it down and glanced at him. The corners of his mouth curled up, revealing a mocking smile. Then, he brought the graceful U and left, gradually disappearing from everyone's sight. Nangong Wuk looked at the frozen Mao Shi as though he was looking at a retard. You actually dared to attack Owner Bu in front of Big Sis Nethery. You're really too young. Nangong Wuk shook his head and sighed. Then he staggered away. Yo, Big Bresson, you came. Your flower protector wanted to attack Old Bu. You're really brave. Unfortunately, your brain isn't enough. Nangong Wuk said with a smile when he saw Sheng rushing over. You're the one with big breasts. Your whole family has big breasts. Sorceress and Sheng glared at Nangong Wuk and waved her fist. Nangong Wuk laughed and jogged away. Looking at Nangong Wuk's departing figure, Sorceress and Sheng finally put down her arm. She glanced at Mao Shi, who was still standing there with cold sweat dripping down his face. She snorted and turned around to leave. Mu Bai furrowed his brows. He felt that something was wrong. However, he didn't think too much about it. He only patted Mao Shi's shoulder, causing the latter's body to tremble. The audience looked at Mao Shi, who was standing there in a daze. Their expressions were a little strange. Mao Shi was actually scared stiff by Owner Bu's gaze. They didn't know the truth, and they didn't need to know the truth. They only needed to know that the genius alchemist Mao Shi was scared stiff by the Dark Horse chef's gaze. Very quickly, this news spread like wildfire. It spread throughout the entire Central Plaza, and many people knew about it. Moreover, the Dark Horse chef said that if Mao Shi's furnace doesn't explode in the next round, he will lose. How domineering. As expected of the Dark Horse chef, he was invincible all the way. Furnace exploding? Can we see another furnace exploding in the next round? I'm so excited. Seeing a genius furnace explode makes me even more excited. I really want to start the next round. Owner Bu's domineering words quickly spread, causing the audience, who wanted to watch a good show, to be so excited that they almost screamed out loud. At this moment, the person who caused this incident was slowly walking back to his own restaurant. Just as he was about to reach the cloud mist restaurant, Bufong suddenly paused. In front of him, there were two figures slowly walking toward him. One in front and one behind, a man and a woman. The woman had a head full of fiery red hair that was like a burning flame. It was extremely eye-catching. Her slender legs were fair and translucent. She wore a pair of red shoes, which made her look a little seductive. Her red lips were gorgeous, and her face was elegant. This woman's temperament was like that of an emperor. She was cold and elegant. Behind this woman was an old man with a hunched back. The old man's temperament was also very cold. His eyes were deep and unfathomable. As Bufong slowly walked forward, the woman also walked in his direction. The distance between the two of them rapidly shortened. In the end, the two of them brushed past each other. Neither of them stopped and continued walking forward. Old monster, the two people who just passed by, one of them has the fluctuations of the Shura Tower. The Shura Saintess played with her slender fingers. Her bright red nails emitted a strange light, as if they were smeared with fresh blood. That's right, Saintess. That youth really has the fluctuations of the Shura Tower. The old servant said respectfully. It seems that Tong, he didn't lie to me. Since that youth is the owner of the restaurant, the woman behind him should be the Netherworld woman that Tong he mentioned, right? The Netherworld ship in the secret realm. The Netherworld woman is inside the Netherworld ship. Saintess, that woman is not simple. She is very scary and very difficult to deal with. Tong did the right thing this time. If we acted rashly, we might not be able to snatch the Shura Tower, the old servant said seriously. His cultivation was very strong, but the Netherworld woman's valiance made him tremble. Oh, there's no rush. Let's take it slow. Isn't the owner of the restaurant participating in the Pill Palace's Magical Hand Conference? As long as the Netherworld woman isn't by the store's owner's side, we can make our move and directly capture that store's owner. To be able to use the Shura Tower as a pendant. This guy is really bold. The Shura Saintess' red lips curled up slightly, revealing a beautiful smile. The old servant behind her immediately bowed and nodded his head. Yes, Saintess. Chapter 535. You as a woman, and a cold one at that. Naturally, she did not care about the Saintess. At this moment, all she could think about was the fragrant dragon blood rice. Damn it, this won't do. My mental state is still unstable, and there will be loopholes. If that chef finds an opportunity, he will be defeated. This match, he can only win. He cannot lose. Mao Shi exhaled, his face cold. Bufong was a little speechless as he tidied up the plates. These two lazy fellows, normal influences would have no effect on him. Xiongshi was a little depressed. He had made a mistake. He had always thought that his big bear had gone to find a female bear. Who would have thought that his big bear would become an ingredient? Caught off guard, his mental state suffered a blow. You didn't care about her figure, but as her boss, Bufong felt that he needed to care about his employees. He continuously practiced and strengthened his mental state. He worked hard to make his mental state more stable and unaffected by the outside world. Inside the Heavenly Shine City's worship booth, Fong clenched his fists, his face full of seriousness. The name list for the next match had also appeared. Among the 5 contestants, one of them would advance without a bye. Once he smelled food, this lazy dog wouldn't be able to sleep anymore. What a headache. Mao Shi's cultivation was high, and his mental state was also strong. Normal dishes would not be able to affect him. Rubbing his chin, Bufong thought about it seriously. Nangon Wuk seemed to know about the matter that gave Bufong a headache. After thinking for a long time, he patted his chest and promised Bufong that he would bring an ingredient that would satisfy him. Blood fire, Shura pill. You are from the ancient Shura city? Bufong was stunned. He looked at the fat dog and then at the beautiful Yu. However, when the others heard this news, they heaved a sigh of relief. They didn't need to meet Mu Bai, so they wouldn't be eliminated. Xiongshi, are you looking for me? Mao Shi asked in a hoarse voice. In front of him, there was a huge alchemy furnace. Medicinal ingredients were constantly being thrown into the alchemy furnace. Mauscher's expression was a little sinister as the ingredients were being refined and decomposed within the alchemy furnace. They turned into drops of medicinal liquid that floated in the air. For origin crystals, the two of them became the next opponents. This was not unexpected, but everyone was still very excited. From there, two figures slowly walked out. There was still a lazy shrimp here. Bufong also found it a little funny that he actually raised 3 lazy people. However, Nangong Wuk didn't explain anything. He just cast a meaningful glance at Bufong and left in a hurry. He didn't want to participate in the following matches. That was one disaster after another. He would be letting himself down if the furnace didn't explode. However, Mauscher's words made him feel disgusted. Bufong felt that he should teach that brat a lesson. He wanted him to feel despair and let him understand how terrifying Chef was. Bufong felt that in order not to embarrass himself, he still had to do something serious and try his best to make the other party's furnace explode. This was especially so for the audience. They had seen the scene of Mauscher personally attacking Bufong. They naturally knew that there was a conflict between Bufong and Mauscher. The match between the two of them was definitely going to be a huge clash. The alchemy furnace ruthlessly smashed onto the floor of the secret room, emitting a loud bang. A green smoke rose from the furnace. The crystals obtained from the magical hand conferences ranking will be counted as the turnover of the host. Bufong even said to Mauscher that if his furnace didn't explode, it would be his loss. This made the audience even more excited. The top 5 had been decided. Mauscher glanced at Xiongshi and sneered. "You have a plan? I remember that you were defeated by that chef." Thinking back to the first time he saw the Lord go, he was such a slim dog. His eyes were a little red, and his breathing was unstable. Didn't he see that her face was much redder? Bufong wiped his wet hair and continued to think about the dish. However, he still had no idea. Mauscher subconsciously took it and opened his palm to take a look. His eyes instantly shrank. "This won't do. It's too unsightly. It seems like I have to control you's diet in the future. You are so slim now, but if this continues, will you become a fat dog?" The person who advanced without a bye was not Bufong, but Mu Bai. In the end, he fell asleep on his bed, no longer thinking about this problem that gave him a headache. It still won't do. He could always feel his flaws. He was afraid that Bufong would find out about it and cause his furnace to explode. Once his furnace exploded, his reputation would also be ruined. The stooped old man's wrinkled face instantly trembled. The corners of his mouth slightly rose as he said, "Aren't you worried about how to win against that chef? This is something that can help you win. It's a good thing." Suddenly, the old man casually waved his hand, and a blood-colored jade bottle was thrown toward Mauscher. "Senior brother Mao, are you worried about how to deal with that chef?" Xiongshi asked as he looked at Mauscher with his head drooped. Mauscher poured out an elixir from the jade bottle. That scalding elixir rolled into Mauscher's palm. Mauscher's eyes instantly shrank, and he suppressed a cry of surprise. Mauscher's whole body was dripping with sweat as he walked out of the jade bottle. Mauscher felt that his mental force was boiling, and the true energy in his body was fluctuating. Ever since she followed Bufong, the spirit energy in her body was always in a state of abundance. She no longer had to worry about a backlash. Bufong's reaction was very calm. He was still thinking about what dish to cook. The remaining 2 days quickly came to an end. During these 2 days, Bufong was pondering over the problem of his next dish. While he was pondering over this problem, the competition of the top 10 in the Magical Hand Conference had also ended. Suddenly, Mauscher froze. He squinted his eyes and looked into the distance. Bufong's opponent had also appeared. It was Mauscher, the arrogant fellow from before. Mauscher's hair was scattered, and there was a hint of ruthlessness in his eyes. In his hand, there was a ball of black flames burning fiercely. It continuously burned the air, causing it to distort. Eat, sleep, sleep, eat. This lazy dog's body was getting fatter by the day. He had already become a real fat dog. Bufong was a little dumbfounded, and he didn't understand what was going on. Bufong was stunned for a moment, and then he became excited. He was extremely excited. He had just casually asked. He didn't think that the crystal's reward would actually turn into business. When he carried the dragon blood rice out of the kitchen, the sleeping Lord Go opened its eyes as if it had sensed his presence. It excitedly lay on the table and stared at Bufong with its tongue hanging out. "What is this?" Mouser took a deep breath and asked. However, to make a dish that could cause Mouser to explode his furnace. It was extremely difficult. Bufong didn't have any idea how to do it. How to make a dish with a rich, spicy flavor. After returning to the kitchen, Xiao Bai was still standing at the entrance. His eyes were flickering with a purple light. Xiaopi was lying on top of Xiao Bai's head, spitting out bubbles and sleeping soundly. Bufong and you directly returned to the store. They didn't seem to care about the woman who had just brushed past them. Although Xiongshi was depressed, he didn't say anything. Instead, he moved to the side, revealing a stooped figure beside him. After a long time, the door to the secret chamber was pushed open. This fellow's alchemy skills were amazing. Who would have thought that he would be so lucky to directly enter the top 3? After you and Lord Go finished eating, the man and the dog stretched their bodies at the same time. The dog lay on the path understanding tree, and the man entered the netherworld ship. They both went to sleep at the same time. System, the Magical Hand Conference has crystals as a reward. Are crystals considered as revenue? Bufong asked seriously. He felt that this was an extremely important question. When the two of them returned to the store, Lord Go was lying lazily under the path understanding tree, sleeping soundly. This lazy dog. If Mouser's furnace didn't explode, he would be the one who lost. Hence, he had to make a dish that was stimulating. This was what caused his furnace to explode. This was what caused him to lose. Moreover, he had courted death by igniting the sorrowful orchid. After getting over his excitement, Bufong started thinking about what he should cook for the next round. Bufong had a feeling that this fellow was going to cause trouble. Although that woman was quite beautiful, Bufong didn't really care about her. Bufong twirled the knife in his hand as he slowly paced around the kitchen. He was seriously thinking about this serious question. Bufong shook his head and looked at Lord Go, who was happily gobbling down the porcelain plate. He sighed and suddenly felt something in his heart. He turned his head and looked at you. This woman's table manners were even worse than Lord Go's. Since that was the case, he had to participate in the Magical Hand Conference. Even if it was for crystals, he had to fight until the end. Everything was for crystals. The next day, Nangong Wuk excitedly ran over to tell Bufong about this news. He clenched his fists and told Bufong that he had to get rid of Mouser, that pretentious fellow. Crystals were the most beautiful things in this world. The system didn't reply immediately. It was silent for a long time before answering Bufong's question. It was an old man with a stooped back. He looked at Mouser with a solemn expression. Or should he continue eating this stinky tofu? However, Bufong felt that the chances of success were very low. After all, Mouser's alchemy skills were very strong. He wouldn't be affected so easily. Xiongshir's expression was a little dispirited. After all, his big bear had been slaughtered and cooked in front of him. This was an indescribable sorrow. It would be strange if he was in a good state of mind. This made her feel very satisfied. She felt that this kind of life was pretty good. Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something. His eyes narrowed as he excitedly asked the system. Bang! His skin emitted heat. His white skin was slightly rosy, and the dense heat was extremely mesmerizing. Or perhaps a dish that smelled so good that it had friends everywhere. If he used the Buddha jumps over the wall soup, it would be easy to defeat Mouser. However, to make Mouser's furnace explode, it would be extremely difficult. Hence, Bufong felt a headache coming on. He had completely become that chef's stepping stone. It could even be said that Bufong wanted to use the Buddha jumps over the wall soup as his trump card. Only Xiao Bai was a little cute. He wasn't like the other 3, who only knew how to sleep. After playing with the knife for a while, he still couldn't figure out what to do. Bufong didn't continue thinking about it. He put away the dragon bone kitchen knife and the black turtle constellation wok and returned to his room. After taking a hot shower, he walked out. After patting Xiao Bai's plump belly, Bufong walked to the stove and started thinking about what dish he should cook for the next round. Chapter 536. Bloodfire Shura Pill. This is an elixir for you Shura warriors to use. How dare you recommend this elixir to me? Looking at the blood-colored elixir in his palm, Mao Shu's eyes emitted a dense, killing intent. He exerted some force in his palm, and his true energy vibrated, directly shattering the blood-colored elixir into smithereens. With a wave of his hand, he tossed the bottle of elixir toward the hunchbacked elder. The elder's wrinkled face trembled slightly. He caught the jade bottle and narrowed his eyes. Since you know about the Bloodfire Shura Pill, you should know the effects of this elixir, right? This is the elixir that suits you the most. You should know. The elder smiled faintly. Do you think I'm stupid? Once this elixir is consumed, it will cause the user's mental force to surge in a short period of time. However, once the effects of the elixir wear off, the user will fall into a state of depression for at least half a month. For a trash chef, is there a need for me to ruin myself like this? Mao Shu snorted as he looked at the hunchbacked elder. Xiong Shu stood at the side and did not say anything. He did not know what to say. When the elder found him, he was in a state of grief. When the elder asked him if he wanted to take revenge, he thought of his big bear and agreed to the elder's request. He did not think that the elder's method of revenge would be like this. I'll tell you the truth. You won't be able to win against that chef, the elder said. If you don't use this elixir, you will lose, and you will lose miserably. How could I, Mao Shu, lose? Don't try to scare me. You disgusting old man from the ancient Shura city. Mao Shu angrily roared. The true energy in front of him surged as he tried to push the elder away. However, the old man only gently raised his palm, and Mao Shu instantly felt the energy in his body being suppressed. It was forced back into his body. It was so unbearable that he almost vomited blood. Thump! Mao Shu continuously retreated a few steps and finally sat on the ground. His face was filled with disbelief as he stared at the elder. Young man, you are really rude, arrogant, and savage. This is your biggest problem. This is also the reason why you can't compare to Mubai. Moreover, tomorrow, you will know, you can't even compare to that chef. The old man hunched his back and slowly retracted his raised palm. He coughed and casually tossed the blood-colored jade bottle in front of Mao Shu. It rolled for a while and only stopped when it touched Mao Shu's leg. I'll give his pill to you. Whether you want to use it or not is up to you. With his hands behind his back, the hunchbacked old man turned around and slowly walked out of the warship. Very quickly, his figure disappeared. Xiong Shu stood rooted to the ground. Everything had happened too suddenly. He had never imagined that Mao Shu would suddenly release such a powerful aura and that the elder would suddenly become so unfathomable. He slapped his face, somewhat dumbfounded. Mao Shu stared at the disappearing figure of the old man. He gritted his teeth and slowly picked up the blood-colored jade bottle. He looked at the jade bottle and then looked in the direction the old man had left. His gaze was deep. After Bu Fong ended the Cloud Mist restaurant's business for the day, he was about to close the bronze doors when Nangong Wuk waved his hand and walked over from afar. Old Bu, wait a minute. Nangong Wuk shouted. Under the setting sun, he ran with all his might. The setting sun elongated his shadow, illuminating his figure as he waved his hands. It looked somewhat comical. Bu Fong looked at this scene in a daze. When he came back to his senses, he expressionlessly turned around and closed the bronze doors with a bang. What the F***CK? Old Bu, you're not being honest. Why did you close the door when you knew it was me? Nangong Wuk was stunned as he stood rooted to the ground. Bang, bang, bang. After knocking on the bronze doors a few times, they slowly opened. What appeared was an expressionless face of absolute beauty. Oh, elder sister Nethery, what a coincidence. You're here as well. When Nangong Wuk saw that the person who opened the door was you, his whole body stiffened. He awkwardly smiled and said, You shot a glance at Nangong Wuk and tapped the ground with her feet. Her black skirt fluttered as her figure floated into the distance. Bu Fong pulled out a chair and curled up on it. He looked at Nangong Wuk calmly. Tell me, why did you look for me? The restaurant's business hours have ended, Bu Fong said. Nangong Wuk raised his brows and walked toward Bufong with a meaningful look on his face. He pulled out a chair and sat beside Bufong. He mysteriously looked around before speaking in a low voice. "Old Boo, let me show you something good." Nangon Wuk's face was filled with a sneaky smile. Bufong was startled. "Something good? What was it? You couldn't think of what ingredients would be used in the competition, right?" "I brought it here for you to broaden your horizons," Nangon Wuk said. "Ingredients?" Nangon Wuk brought ingredients for him? "That's a little interesting." Bufong suddenly became curious. He tilted his head and looked at Nangon Wuk. The smile on Nangon Wuk's face didn't stop. He looked at the door and his hand flickered. He grabbed a flapping figure from his spatial spirit tool. Cluck, cluck, cluck. Nangon Wuk grabbed the figure and laughed foolishly. The figure struggled in his hand and flapped its body, causing its feathers to fall to the ground. Bufong's eyes widened. This little guy, could it be the legendary and mysterious ingredient? 8 treasures chicken? That's right. Nangon Wuk was holding a chicken in his hand. A chicken with colorful feathers. This chicken flapped its wings, and its chubby body struggled unceasingly as it clucked nonstop. Furthermore, this 8 treasures chicken was missing one of its wings. It stared at Nangon Wuk as though it was looking at a demon, and it was terrified. The 8 treasures chicken was a divine realm ingredient. It was much more delicious than the divine realm bear. The bear's meat wasn't that delicious, but the 8 treasures chicken was different. It was the most delicious 8 treasures chicken in the world. It was a rare ingredient. Nangon Wuk actually caught the 8 treasures chicken. This thing, if it was cooked, it would definitely be a delicious dish. Gulp! Bufong pouted, and his eyes lit up as he stared at the 8 treasures chicken. The 8 treasures chicken was startled once again. It clucked even faster than before. It flapped its wings continuously, and colorful feathers fluttered in the air. "Stop messing around. Show Old Boo a smile." Nangon Wuk stretched out his hand and pinched the 8 treasures chicken's head. He lifted it up and looked at Bufong. The 8 treasures chicken opened its mouth and its eyes widened. Its claws nervously clenched together. "Don't look at me like that. I'm just a chicken." At this moment, the 8 treasures chicken felt as though 10,000 black dogs were running around in its heart. It thought that after that fiend left the pill tower, it would be able to enjoy a few days of leisure. During the day, it would peck on the spirit energy rice and bask in the sun. At night, it would sleep in its own nest. However, who would have thought that the fiend would suddenly return? He grabbed its wings and ran away. That appearance scared the chicken to death. "I don't want to eat chicken. I'm just a chicken without dreams." "Old Boo, look at it. Isn't it fat? With this little guy, can we get rid of Maosher in tomorrow's competition?" Nangon Wuk's eyes lit up as he stared at Bufong. Bufong smacked his lips and sized up the 8 treasures chicken. He nodded his head in satisfaction. It was really a high-quality ingredient. It was no wonder that even the system gave the 8 treasures chicken a good evaluation. "Why is one of the chicken's wings missing?" Bufong asked curiously. You don't have to worry about such a small flaw. The last time I ate it, it still hasn't grown." Nangon Wuk's mouth twitched as he replied. This chicken was really pitiful. Why did it have to meet a clown like Nangon Wuk? How could one only eat one wing when eating a chicken? That was not right. It was the wrong way to eat a chicken. However, when Bufong looked at the 8 treasures chicken, he felt happy and was eager to try it out. With an ingredient like the 8 treasures chicken, he would be more confident in tomorrow's competition. He had also thought about what kind of ingredient he wanted to cook the next day. "All right, leave this chicken here. You can go back first. Tomorrow, watch carefully. If Maosher's furnace doesn't explode, it will be my loss," Bufong calmly said. When Nangon Wuk heard that, his eyes lit up. He passed the 8 treasures chicken to Bufong and gave Bufong a thumbs up. "Old Boo, Nangon Wuk, look favorably upon you. Do your best." After saying that, Nangon Wuk walked out of the restaurant. When he reached the door, he turned around and said, "Old Boo, you must give this 8 treasures chicken the best treatment. This is the only time in its life." The corners of Bufong's mouth curled up, and he rolled his eyes. With a bang, He closed the bronze door. Cluck, cluck, cluck. After Nangong Wuk left, the 8 treasures chicken's nervousness seemed to have dissipated. It stared at Bufong with its small eyes. One of its wings flapped, and it started to struggle crazily. 8 treasures chicken. Bufong, if this chicken is made into sweet and sour ribs, it should be more delicious than sweet and sour dragon ribs, right? It was unknown when the Lord Go appeared in front of Bufong. It widened its eyes and stared at the 8 treasures chicken. Of course, after all, this is the 8 treasures chicken. It is a famous ingredient. Although this 8 treasures chicken is a mixed blood 8 treasures chicken and not a purebred one, its taste is not something ordinary dragon meat can compare to. If you can get your hands on true dragon meat, sweet and sour dragon ribs will be the best, Bufong said as he stood up. The Lord Go rolled its eyes and said, Bufong, do you think true dragons are cabbages? Also, how can true dragon meat be so easy to get? All right, this chicken is a little restless. Tonight, I will let you train it. Make it more restless and maintain the perfection of its meat. Tomorrow, I will make a delicious dish. Bufong looked at the Lord Go, and the corners of his mouth curled up. He casually tossed the 8 treasures chicken. The 8 treasures chicken streaked through the air in a beautiful arc and landed in front of the Lord Go. The 8 treasures chicken was taken aback. Its eyes widened, and it stared at the Lord Go's bright eyes. Cluck, cluck, cluck. The Lord Go's eyes flashed with a crafty glint. He opened his mouth and revealed his sharp fangs. Then, he opened his mouth and barked. Woof! Cluck! In the next instant, the chicken and the dog jumped. The 8 treasures chicken was so scared that its guts almost flew away. Flapping its wings, it spread its claws and flew away. The fur on the Lord Go's body stood up, and it was incomparably excited. It chased after the chicken and started barking crazily. Yu expressionlessly looked at this scene. Her red lips curled upwards, and she was somewhat speechless. She turned around and entered the netherworld ship that belonged to her. Bufong was also somewhat speechless. This fat dog actually bullied a chicken that had no ideals. Oh, you fat dog, be careful. Don't eat this chicken. Otherwise, I will deduct a month's worth of sweet and sour ribs. Bufong turned around and was about to return to the kitchen when he suddenly thought of something. He said to the Lord Go in a serious tone. Lord Dog's figure instantly froze, and he swallowed the saliva that was about to flow out of his mouth. Between an uncooked chicken and sweet and sour ribs, the Lord Go still chose sweet and sour ribs. Bufong looked at the scene that had become much more harmonious, and he nodded his head. He entered the kitchen and started to study the dish for the next day. With the 8 treasures chicken, Bufong finally had the confidence to make Mao Shi's furnace explode. If the furnace doesn't explode, then it's my loss. Chapter 537. The next day, the sun rose. The warm sunlight shone on Bufong's face, and it made him feel a little itchy. Opening his eyes, Bufong got up from his bed and stretched his waist. After washing up, Bufong walked out of his room and walked toward the store. The store was a little quiet, and this made Bufong a little suspicious. Last night, there was chaos. Why was it so quiet this morning? Bufong stretched his head out and looked into the store. Soon, he found the location of the 8 treasures chicken. In the distance, Lord Go was quietly lying under the path understanding tree, and his breathing was steady. A claw was patting the head of the 8 treasures chicken. The 8 treasures chicken had a lifeless expression on its face as it laid on the ground. Its wings were drooping, and there were feathers all over the ground. Its body was twitching from time to time. Its small eyes were wide open, and it was filled with fear. Too scary. It was simply too scary. This dog, it was too scary. Bufong yawned and walked to the front of the 8 treasures chicken. Looking at the twitching 8 treasures chicken, he couldn't help but sigh. He stretched out his hand and rubbed the chicken's head. The 8 treasures chicken still had a lifeless expression on its face. It must have been hard on you. You actually survived the night. TSK, TSK. This chicken is really tight. Bufong sighed in admiration. He didn't put the 8 treasures chicken back into the system's dimensional storage. Instead, he returned to the kitchen in satisfaction. He cooked a portion of sweet and sour ribs and dragon blood rice and brought them into the store. At this moment, Lord Dog and Nethery were already sitting at the dining table. Black is sweet and sour ribs and use dragon blood rice. You looked at the portion of dragon blood rice in front of her, which seemed to have been reduced by half, and a look of dissatisfaction appeared on her face. She raised her head and stared at Bufong. Bufong stretched out his hand and patted Yu's head. "Oh, do you want to become as fat as this fat dog? For the sake of your figure, you should eat a little less. You are so angry. She would rather be as fat as a dog." You turned her head back in dissatisfaction and angrily began to eat the dragon blood rice on the porcelain plate. His table manners were filled with anger. Lord Go's mouth twitched, revealing a playful smile. He seemed to be very fond of the fats on his body, shaking them in front of you. This made you furious again. Bufong returned to the kitchen, and after making some preparations, he picked up the 8 treasures chicken and walked out of the restaurant. He slowly walked towards the central plaza. Today was the day of his match with Mao Shi. Bufong placed a lot of importance on this match. After all, he had made a promise. If he couldn't fulfill it, Bufong would feel that he had lost a lot of face. He had always been a man of his word. Even though the 8 treasures chicken was holding a chicken, it was still in a state of excitement. Its small eyes were wide open. Bufong rubbed the chicken's head and walked along a small path between the tall buildings. A flash of light appeared in front of him, and he appeared in the central plaza. The moment he entered the plaza, a deafening noise resounded. A huge stage was erected in the center of the plaza, and there were many people sitting around it. These people were all spectators, and they were incomparably excited. When they saw Bufong enter the plaza, they were so excited that they screamed. This match was viewed with great importance by countless people. It was all because of Bufong's words. "If the furnace doesn't explode, it will be my loss." Was he domineering? Was he arrogant? He actually said such words to a genius alchemist who had the qualifications to fight for the championship. "My chef is too awesome." Some people admired Bufong's domineering attitude. Even when facing the genius alchemist Mao Shi, he did not retreat. He even dared to say such ruthless words. Some people felt that Bufong was just acting cool. After all, Mao Shi was not the alchemist who had his furnace explode because of Bufong. He was a true genius, a genius who had the chance to compete with Mu Bai. Geniuses naturally had their own extraordinary points. If not, how could they be called geniuses? It was basically impossible for Bufong to make Mao Shi explode his furnace. Everyone thought that those words were said in a moment of anger. This match could be said to be the focus of everyone's attention. Almost everyone in the Pill Palace was paying attention to this match. Currently, in the Pill Palace, there were many supporters of Bufong. However, compared to Mao Shi, there were still many supporters. After all, Mao Shi was a popular alchemist in the Pill Palace, and he had many supporters. Although he could not be compared to Mu Bai, he was not someone that the newly emerged Bufong could compare to. What an arrogant chef! Very soon, he will feel the meaning of despair. It has finally begun. We will soon be able to see senior brother, Mao, ruthlessly oppress this chef. How exciting! The dignity of us alchemists will be protected by senior brother Mao. Defeat the public enemy of the alchemists. Senior brother Mao, it is time for you to show your true strength. The audience chattered incessantly, and they were extremely excited. Regardless of whether they were inside or outside the projection array, everyone was equally excited. The number of people who supported Mao Shi far exceeded the number of people who supported Bufong. However, Bufong was still very calm. He carried the 8 treasures chicken and stepped into the central plaza. Nangon Wuk waved at Bufong from afar. "Old Bu, you can do it. Defeat that pretentious guy." Nangon Wuk shouted loudly, causing the faces of the alchemists from Heavenly Shine City to darken. Bufong nodded his head and did not say anything. In the audience stand, the long eyelashes of the ancient Shura City saintess, who was wearing a red veil, trembled. Her beautiful eyes landed on Bufong, who was slowly entering the plaza. The stooped old man who was sitting beside her had an indifferent expression on his face. "Old demon, is everything prepared?" The saintess opened her red lips and said lazily. She raised her slender leg and crossed it over her other leg. Her silky skirt slid down slightly, revealing her white skin. This scene caused the eyeballs of many in the audience to widen, and they all swallowed their saliva. The Shura saintess did not seem to care, and she continued to chat with the old servant calmly. "It has already been arranged. This chef will definitely lose," the old servant said. "Very good. If he loses in the first 3 rounds, this chef will definitely be very disappointed. At that time, it will be our chance." The saintess smiled lightly. "Saintess, actually, the Netherworld woman did not appear today. We can directly take action. Don't make a fuss. This is the Pill City after all. Although our ancient Shura city is not afraid of the Pill Palace, directly kidnapping a participant in the Pill City is still a little troublesome. We should find an opportunity to take action," the saintess said lazily. The old servant's wrinkled face instantly wrinkled. In the end, he relaxed and sighed. All right. After that, the gazes of the two of them continued to fall on the stage. Buffon walked up the stage. He carried the 8 treasures chicken and walked to his seat. Mouser quickly appeared as well. The moment he appeared, it caused the entire audience to cheer. The entire audience was in an uproar. All sorts of cheers, and all sorts of voices to suppress Buffon rang out. Mouser's entire person was gloomy and arrogant. A smile hung on the corner of his mouth as he stood on the stage. He was incomparably confident as he looked at Buffon with a face full of arrogance. "You chef, it's not too late to admit defeat. If not, you will regret it." Buffon glanced at Mouser and the corners of his mouth curled up. "You will cause your furnace to explode." "Oomph." Mouser took in a deep breath and coldly snorted. He looked at Buffon with disdain and turned around to walk in front of his bronze platform. In the sky, the warship rumbled as it flew over. 5 elders slowly walked out of the warship. Grandmaster Xian Ming and the others also arrived. They had the air of immortals, and their auras were awe-inspiring. After seriously lecturing for a while, their gazes landed on the competition, and they sat on the high stage. The person in charge of this competition was still the head judge. This time, the head judge had a solemn expression on his face. This competition was no small matter. On one side was a genius alchemist, and on the other side was the biggest dark horse in this year's Magical Hand Conference. The battle between the two of them would definitely be extremely intense. Thus, the head judge did not dare to be careless. He did not think that Buffon would lose. With his understanding of Buffon, this chef would definitely have some unknown tricks up his sleeves. No one knew what kind of dish this chef was going to cook. Chicken? Could it be that the dish this time was related to that chicken? The head judge had already noticed the chicken in Buffon's embrace. He narrowed his eyes and pondered for a moment. That wasn't an ordinary chicken. Mouser stood in front of his bronze platform. He was calm and collected. Although he was arrogant at times, when he was refining elixirs, he would still put all of his attention into it. He carefully took out the medicinal ingredients that he had prepared beforehand and placed them on his bronze platform. This time, he was going to refine a 3-mark spirit pill. It could be said that it was the highest grade elixir that appeared in this year's Magical Hand Conference. Mouser was also under a lot of pressure. This was because he did not have full confidence in refining a 3-mark spirit pill. Although he had always looked down on this chef, Buffon, he knew that this chef was not easy to deal with. Otherwise, he wouldn't have such a headache. Suddenly, a blood-colored jade bottle appeared in his hand. Mouser was stunned. He pinched the jade bottle and clenched his teeth. In the end, he quietly kept the jade bottle and took out another medicinal ingredient. On the other side, Buffon also took out ingredients from the system's dimensional storage. The dense spiritual energy gushed out and enveloped the bronze platform that Buffon was on. Many people let out cries of surprise. This was because they realized that the ingredients that Buffon took out this time were all of a very high grade, and the spiritual energy was very dense. All right, the 2 contestants, please pay attention. This competition will determine your advancement. The winner will be able to advance to the top 3 and will have the chance to compete with young Master Mu Bai for the final ranking. The winner will be able to enter the Heaven's Secret territory. There will also be a spirit pill prepared by the Pill Palace as a reward. Everyone, please do your best in the competition and fight for glory. The head judge stood in the center of the stage and looked at the two of them as he spoke in a serious tone. His voice wasn't loud, but as he spoke, the entire square quieted down. After he finished speaking, the audience in the square instantly started to clamor and screams could be heard continuously. Now, the competition officially begins. Hua, hua. The sound shook the heavens, and it seemed as if it wanted to overturn everything. Mao Shi's eyes widened, and the true energy in his body suddenly gushed out. He raised his hand, and a ball of pitch-black flames shot out from his palm. A terrifying temperature instantly filled the entire square. Heaven and earth obsidian flame, limitless underworld flame, appear. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.